If Mike's talking about bridges, we're good, sir.
Good. Okay, we'll open up the meeting. Can we please stand for the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, it's the budget season. We're going to have a special presentation from our business official, Admin. All yours. Oh, I'm sorry. First, we'll open up the meeting to public comment for agenda items only. Okay, we'll close public comment and we'll go into our special presentation.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. I'll try and make this entertaining and short and sweet. We're going to start off tonight. We're going to talk about the tax levy submission. We'll discuss the revised state and local revenue. We'll talk about the 25-26 draft budget, the expenses and the shortfall. We'll talk about the bus referendum analysis, and we'll have the board discussion in terms of the certain topics. So, at the last board meeting, we presented the tax levy limit calculation, which I went through. We went through all the numbers. I showed you how it was determined. I just wanted to make sure that the trustees and everyone is aware that this was submitted to the state on 2/24/25. The actual due date is March 1st, so we got it done ahead of time. There were no changes to our numbers. We still have the 33,909,225 as being our tax levy number. Any questions? Okay, let's move on. We'll start then with our analysis on a discussion about the changes in our revenue, our state aid revenue. There are two changes we have. The first one is a little change. It's at the bottom. It says charter school. We have a charter school that's in the district, and we have one student attending that charter school, so we will receive an additional $1,000. Yay. It's short and sweet, and that will be something we'll get for 25-26. The biggest change happens to be in the building aid line. If you'll notice, the building aid for 24-25 is $1,522,413. The estimated revenue for 25-26 building aid is $2,708,495. In the last presentation that I gave, the actual budget numbers per the governor's run were $1,446,022. That means we have an increase of $1,262,473. I will pause for a moment because there are some big numbers there. The biggest number happens to be that building aid. That was presented by Bernard Donegan. We have actually sat with your fiscal advisors or our fiscal advisors and gone over these numbers. This relates to the Chapter 97 law of 2011. It's kind of weird when they say Chapter 97 law of 2011, it gets a little murky, but that is the law in hand that talks about getting aid to the school districts if you have submitted certain documentation, final cost reports, certificates of substantial completion, all have to be presented to the governor or in their possession by November. At that point, she pulls those numbers into her governor's run. That's why they didn't show up in this run. The law also allows us to have information submitted on or before June 30th, and we will receive aid not only in this year, but also next year. And that's where Bernard Donegan kind of went through the analysis, looked at the expenses, looked at the numbers, looked at our submissions, and came up with the dollars that said we should increase our building aid because they feel very, very confident that we will receive this on or before for the next school year. And that's what that big jump is here. It's a $1,186,082 increase in the building. Yes.
And that aid is tied to the expense of the capital projects that we did here?
That is absolutely correct. This is in relation to the $22 million capital project we have. Phase 1 has been completed, and with that being done, all of the final cost reports and information has to be submitted. A month ago, we sat down with the Palumbo Group, we sat down with facilities, accounting, superintendent was on the line, and Bernard Donegan was there, and I put this together to have a quick meeting to ensure what documentation we needed to get in their possession so that they can get this money for us. And we have a deadline, we've got a little bit of a schedule that we're gonna work on, making sure we provide them with certain information, the expenses, everything that they will need so that they can file the reports so that we can receive this aid. It's all continued, we're working collaboratively to get it done.
Right, there's some deadlines, but.
There were some deadlines. We had a March 14th deadline to ensure, first and foremost, that we gave Bernard Donegan our expenses of the capital projects, specific capital projects for phase 1 that have been completed. We gave them that information. They are now starting to craft the documentation that needs to go to the state so they can ask for the aid.
Thank you.
And that's the biggest number on the page. So that is a big jump in our revenue. Question?
There's been no phase 2 has been submitted yet, right? 'Cause I know we did close out a couple of phases of phase 2. I know there's a second half of phase 2, which is this summer, but the first half, which was last summer, we did complete some as far as the turf field and such.
So
were they submitted yet, or they're going to be for next year?
that's a good question. We are with phase 2, if we get the documentation submitted on or before November, and we plan to do that, we're going to work once again. We're getting through this first phase of getting phase 1 information. But if we get all the certificate of substantial completion, final cost reports for phase 2, we will receive aid for that, and that will most likely push into 25.
I see, there's a cycle. If you can capture it in, but prior to the state doing the aid funds, I got you.
Right. We believe that we will make sure, well, I say we believe, I know that we will work to get those reports done and get them submitted because we've been very aware and staying on top of all the capital projects that have been done. There will be some that fall because some of the vendors haven't completed all their projects, but we have a way of asking the state to give us the revenue based upon some other issues. So we are looking at not only phase 1, but phase 2. And that I did not add phase 2 into some of these numbers because I want to make sure that we've gotten past that hurdle of getting through phase 1. So that is the biggest issue here. We roll the numbers forward. That increases our total revenue by $1.5 million. We roll that number forward. The new revenue number we now have is $20,646,75. I have left things the same from the last presentation. Medicaid being flat, pilots increasing slightly. The other revenue sources, which we've talked about before, include interest. It includes, let me just go through. It includes interest of $250,000, BOCES of about $400,000, which is the surplus. It's got $50,000 in prior year and $20,000 in future reimbursement. I think we went very conservatively on the interest. We've got when you look at this year's revenue, you'll see that the interest we've gained is significantly higher than our budget. But I wanted to be a little bit conservative in terms of that. I don't want to put it in interest. We don't know what's happening with the economy. So 250 seems to be reasonable. We will be higher, but I'm hedging my bets with 250. Once again, BOCES is 400. That is the normal average that we would get back in terms of BOCES reimbursement. We were running around about 425, 430. We went to 400. So there is some room that we could possibly increase in that line that says other revenue sources. But once again, I'd rather be conservative than be aggressive in giving numbers and they do not materialize. That will leave us with a new revenue increase of $2,381,609. Any questions so far?
So going back to the building aid, when does the state typically firmly cement that or finalize their numbers?
November.
It's in November, so the estimated numbers will be told those in November.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So normally in November, the governor gets their numbers, she pulls them in, and she has everything, SA 139s, everything that's needed to kind of drive that aid into the output reports. If it's not there, based upon the Chapter 97 law, she will not include that in her.
Well, but the numbers that you estimated, those aren't official numbers yet.
Those aren't official.
Those are estimated.
Those are estimated numbers.
Yes,
and once again, those numbers have been vetted by Bernard Donegan.
Right.
We are very comfortable that this will be done, with the exception of snow, rain, and sleet.
Right, well, and so we hope, but
Yes.
the weather's been looking funny, so.
Yeah, so we will meet all those goals in terms of getting the aid. So, if there are no other questions, we're gonna move on to the expense side. On the expense side budget, the rollover budget had various budget scenarios. I took into consideration a zero-based budget on certain lines. We did a trend increase on other lines, and we did a percentage increase on some lines. Rather than keeping it as a standard zero-based budget, we kind of did a hybrid on some of the things. We looked at, when I was looking at health insurance, I looked at the increase in health insurance, a percentage increase, and added that back in. If we were looking at the debt service, we went straight to the debt service that we have, including the new debt service we have for the buildings. We added that back in. If we were looking at contractual lines, I looked at the trend. If we're spending between 23-24 and 24-25, are we spending high or low? If we were spending equal, I left it the same. If we're spending a little bit higher, I probably increased it. So once again, there are variables in here in these expense side to take into consideration different approaches. With that being said, we have the salaries, which we took into consideration all contractual agreements, all steps, raises, lanes, increases, everything that naturally will increase due to contract agreements. You'll notice that the benefits increases by $471,000. That's contributory because we have an increase in our health insurance. Night shift went up 2%. MVP went up 5%. We have a 9% increase in the ERS, even though our TRS went down slightly. We have these large increases in the benefits. The other item that went up was BOCES, as you can see, 362. I will say for the BOCES, the district is still looking at the BOCES expenditures. We haven't finalized them yet at this point. We're kind of going through some of the cross contracts and looking at other variables to ensure that we can bring that BOCES line down. And I think that's going to happen. And of course, you've got your debt service, that you're paying the debt on that $22 million bond that you had that's finally come due. So now we've got an increase in the debt service. Other items just went up: buildings and grounds, transportation, equipment. The interfund transfers actually went down because we believe that food service, the transfer that the general fund would have to give to food service, because food service is a CEP, they're generating a better profit. So the general fund will not have to contribute as much as it did in the past, and that's reflected here. At the end of it all, we have a $3,368,471 increase from the prior year's budget. It's about 6% increase. So these are the major drivers. Once again, your debt service, your salaries, your benefits, and your BOCES. And that totals about $3,040,913. Once again, we are still scrubbing some of these numbers to bring them down. Which brings me to the deficit. I'm following what the previous administrator did, Lindsay, and what she presented was the budget estimates around about the same time, 14th, 5th, and I said 25. We showed that we had a 319 gap, and then we had last year, it was 1,856,787. This year, we are estimating it to be 1,051,266. That is the current gap that we have. So, in order to...
With that, Desmond, you're confident that you can massage the BOCES expenditure, bring that down, which would in turn reduce that overall deficit?
I don't believe I can bring it all the way down.
But it will bring it down slightly.
In my numbers, the numbers are slightly higher, and I've spoken to Mr. Boyd, we've spoken to the superintendent, we've spoken to Mr. Bill. We've kind of looking at those numbers and kind of bringing them down. Do we need this service? Do we don't need that service? This one goes up, this one goes down. So I do believe BOCES will come down a little bit more than the 362 that we have there. And the other lines that we're going to, once again, we're looking at other expenses. We still believe there's a little bit of wiggle room we can do, but eventually we'll get down to a point where you can go no further. And so that brings me to my slide here where we're saying, well, what are our options? Of course, I'm going to reduce supplies and equipment. I'm looking at all the expenses to try and bring that down. I will do my best. That's my job. We can cut positions. And what I mean by cut positions, I didn't want to stop that mean cutting jobs. What I mean is in every school budget, there are some vacancies that they put in there. Let's look at how many vacancies we have and do we really need all of those vacancies? That's a little tight because if you do employ somebody, you didn't have enough reserve for that person to come on board. That's one area we can look at. We can look at the retirement and attrition. We're looking at individuals who would be able to retire. We could leave and then bring new people on board at a lower rate. We then come to the allocation of reserves. You have a very healthy reserve, and the board, when I first came on board, has a policy in terms of replenishing their reserves. You've done a great job in replenishing the reserves, and you have certain reserves. You have a TRS reserve, an ERS reserve, a taxiori, you have a capital reserve, and what's also known as compensated absences. You have enough in those reserves that if you decided to plug the gap, you could use some of those reserves. And then finally, you've got the allocation of fund balance.
Just to be clear, capital reserve cannot be used, correct?
That is correct. Capital reserve cannot be used, so I was just reciting the reserves that we have, but capital reserve you cannot use because that has to be specifically for capital issues. Right. You probably, and we can talk more about it if you'd like, we could use ERS, TRS, and some of the other reserves, this taxiori, to kind of help hedge some of the expenses that you have here. Once again, you're bringing down expenses, you could use your reserves.
Well, some of those, reserves are related to increases in benefit costs, so there's a conversation.
It's a conversation. It's a direction something you want to think about, not necessarily make a decision.
As the targets become more clear.
But historically, we haven't really touched any of our reserves.
Yeah.
Offset budget increases. We've used fund balance.
Last year we did. Last year you did. You used
250 to 250.
Yeah.
But that didn't come out of the TRS or any of those reserves. It came out of
fund balance.
Which reserve it came out of?
No, that came out of a reserve.
Reserve?
Yeah, the fund balance was the
1.15.
Previous was 900,000.
We took 250 out of,
It might have been ERS.
ERS or TRS.
It might have been ERS.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have that option. As we circle back to the allocation of fund balance, we're going to look at this year's expenses. We actually, as of Monday, there are no other expenses going through the district. We cut off all POs. I'm not the most popular person right now, but that's the way it works. We're then going to look at what our expenses are. We're going to project the salaries going forward, look at the savings we have in those expense lines, and try to come up with some type of estimate of fund balance we would possibly give back for this year. We do have additional state aid revenue coming in. We also have some state aid revenue that's kind of countering that. Go ahead.
Do these numbers include retirees who've announced retirements thus far in the school year?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. The few that have voiced that they will retire, we have taken into consideration the swapping that they will be and the moving around. But we're also going to look at others who, at this point, between now and the end of the school year, if they're going to make a decision to do so, how would that help the budget? So these are things to consider. The board has to consider, do we want to go with the reserves? We're still trying to cut down expenses. My job in the next 2 weeks is to whittle down that 1 million down as much as I can, and then give you a number that we feel the board needs to kind of make a determination on. So we move into the bus referendum analysis. At the last meeting, I presented that we have a bus referendum of purchasing 2 buses. And the board made the discussion to see, well, what was our inventory and what do we have? So just a little bit of background, you know that the governor has proposed phasing out diesel and gas school bus fleets by 2035. All school buses purchased starting after 2027 must be zero emission buses. That means no fossil fuels buses. The state does recommend that replacing your buses every 10 years. And I left the website if you wanted to look at information about electric buses. This slide is basically your historical show. Let me take up some of my slides to run through. This shows our current fleet in the district. We have 55 vehicles in the district. It's a lot of vehicles.
Yeah.
Now, what I've done, just for informational purposes, the gold colored, if we might call it gold or yellow, represents using the 10-year recommendation by the state. I said items purchased in the years purchased will now need to be replaced 10 years out. So the gold basically represents items that would need to be replaced in 2025, and the green color represents items that need to be replaced in 2026. At the bottom there, buses 165 and 164 in your slide and in your presentation there have already been replaced. We replaced those in 2024 with the buses that we just purchased. So those have already been replaced. I'm just going to move on. This slide now shows you the detail of our 55 fleet. We have 6 diesel buses. We have 23 65 passenger propane buses, 15 30 passenger bus, 4 wheelchairs, and 7 Suburbans. Based upon the information, if you can see, I said items purchased in 2015, there will be 5 buses that would need to be replaced in 2025, based upon the 10-year recommendation from the state. So every 10 years, they feel you should replace your bus or they become mature. There was 3 diesel buses and 2 Suburbans. In the 2016 purchases, there are 9 items, and those are 7 65 passenger bus, 1 30 passenger bus, and 1 Suburban. Once again, there are 14 buses there that would probably should be replaced. Now, I will pause there for a moment to say, we should have a conversation about what we would like to do. This is the discussion as to, we could replace all 14 buses. That's a heavy lift for the district. Do we need all 14 buses? We've got a lot of inventory that we have. We've got to take into consideration certain other criteria. For example, things to consider. The district needs to consider purchasing 10 large buses, 1 small bus, and maybe 3 SUVs by 2027. I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying these are things to consider. We need to take into consideration the population decline in the area, or is it increasing? We're still trying to get an analysis of that, what's going on. It's important to know that we have the population needs of the students of special needs is increasing. And I guess when I said the district must consider population decline, that must be the students that we have. We're declining in students. Basically, when we can see from state aid, our numbers are going down in terms of the students in the district. Do we need all those buses? The district also needs to address the potential decline in transportation aid if we decide to forego the purchases. We build the building aid or the bus aid equal to what we get from the state. So our debt service, it's 5 years. We pay that back in 5 years because the state gives us only 5 years of bus aid. So we kind of balance the 2 out within a 5-year period. The district should consider that they may not need to purchase all outdated inventory buses due to the demographic changes and needs. For example, we may not have to do that because some of the buses we have not met the mark that the state requires of 250,000 miles of usage. Our buses are not even close to that. So we'll have a 55 inventory fleet. We decide to buy more buses, and that will grow our fleet. We'll probably get rid of the diesel ones because those are probably the ones we should most likely get rid of. But now you've got a big fleet of buses that you'd have to consider. I can present to the board. I've got an Excel spreadsheet I didn't want to put in the presentation that can give you the calculations based upon the cost, based upon how we would look at if we're going to do it 2 this year or 3 next year, or if we do all 14, what the cost will be. And I'll send that out to you so you can at least analyze it in your own time to determine what we would like to do. I see questions that need to be asked.
Sorry, you read my face. The 250,000 miles on the buses, how close are they? Are we at 220 or are we at 150?
The last time I looked, we were probably, the oldest one's probably at 100, give or take.
Do we have an inventory on where those miles are for some of those buses?
We have an inventory on all the miles. Every bus that we have in the inventory fleet actually has the amount of mileage that we have. So that will be part of the Excel I could send to you that has, years purchased, it has the mileage, we have all that information that we can send to you.
Sorry, I want to question. Do you have an idea of per year how many miles are added on each bus? I know some buses do longer trips and stuff, but on average, what are they? How many miles are they?
Kathy or Peter have an answer to that?
So you have in the mileage you report.
That's in my report, sorry.
No, that's fine. But we have that, so we can look at, that's another analysis point.
Our buses typically age out before they mile out, okay?
When you consider age out, the 10-year mark?
No, we don't use 10 years.
Good.
Because basically if we purchase a bus to replace, a number of years ago, we got away from replacing bus 115 with a bus because 115 may be in better shape than 116. We may get rid of 116. So that's what we've done. So our
process has been replacing what needs to be replaced if we have a problem bus or something along that
So
line.
it's a conditional assessment.
Condition, yes. And we've also.
It takes into account the
we began-
maintenance record, that's what I'm hearing.
We began a little bit last year on hedging against electric buses so that we would have larger inventory as we headed into wherever the state's gonna go on this mandate. If they move forward with this mandate, then we have inventory to carry us deeper into it so that we can acclimate whatever we need to do to make it without having a severe impact on the tax base or whatever because of purchasing electric buses at a very high cost and the infrastructure and everything else that's associated with that. So our inventory of buses that we currently have is higher than it needs to be, but it's based on the fact that we don't know where electric buses are gonna go.
What's the current average for electric bus on the large ones? 500,000?
They're running close to 500, if not more now.
Regular buses or what?
But this year's buses would be about 176.
And those conditional assessments are essentially the mechanics of the bus, or are they the interior conditions?
What drives it basically is the bus inspections as they're done, what the
Which-
condition of.
Which, by the way, you typically have wonderful inspections.
Correct.
there.
So it's typically, if, the bus inspectors will tell you when he does a bus, sometimes they'll tell you, I don't want to see this bus again.
Listen,
Okay, that's kind of pretty clear at that point in time that they've done
in the
that.
past,
So-
when we've encountered, so there's a bit of a bubble. When we've encountered so we have a 2-year bubble here. What if you took say, if you in fact need those same amounts, buses, styles, you chart a 3-year course. Buy the buses over a 3-year period.
Point well taken. I think the question would be then is, and I believe I had that conversation with Mr. Miller, the mandate that the governor passed down to 2027, is it January 1st of 2027 or is it December 31st of 2027?
We were not able to determine that. Even going
Because
back,
that affects that 3-year.
going back to the original law, we couldn't even determine that. We couldn't determine if it was calendar year 27 or New York State fiscal year starting in April of 2027.
Our fiscal
Or the
year,
school year,
July 1.
okay? We were unable to determine that, so we're hanging it on 2027 at this point.
And
Calendar year.
the purchases are separate from the entire budget, right? These are always a different
Yeah.
line item. And they're subsidized by some of
They're
Well, I think
heavily
it's,
aided
the reimbursement and aid is about
but
72%. I mean, it wasn't. a bad, I
it's
don't know.
expense driven, so you gotta lay out the money to get.
Yeah.
Right, no, I understand that, but there are, I mean, when we're talking about these numbers, we are talking about reimbursable funds that are separate from the budget itself, so. I just wanna make sure that we're keeping these two conversations separate.
And that's why the presentation actually went to 2026, because there was really no solid date as to when we would do 2027. If I put that on the screen, and we could add more buses to that list. So, Mr. Miller's talking about, the buses and how, they're conditioned. This is a presentation that's just talking about them aging out at 10 years.
Right.
And that's kind of the industry standard that the state recommends. We can go 12, we can go whatever we feel, but once again, it then comes back to, well, what's the condition of the buses that we have? And we should revamp that inventory list, those 55, to say, well, which ones are really out there that need to be let go and we can replace. That changes the scope of what you're looking at as compared to just looking at it in terms of strictly, here's what's aging out. So,
Absolutely, I just wanted to clarify that this is a separate issue from the budget itself.
yes.
So any decisions we make with the buses will not affect the budget issue.
No, but you're still going out to.
I just wanted to clarify.
You're gonna go out and bond for the buses, so it's still gonna be something that the
No,
committee would have to vote on.
Sounds like a few more meetings have to take place, and let's see
Well,
how the
I
conversation
think we're deadline
progresses.
for propositions by April
18th.
or April for the 18th meeting. We have to make that
By the
decision.
18th.
By the 18th.
1 year, we missed that date and we got off our cycle
So,
because
We have 2 meetings in April or 1?
one more, April 18th.
Oh, that's good.
March.
No.
I mean, March, I'm sorry.
March
March
17th.
18th, we need to
Sorry,
make
March
this
18th.
decision.
Desmond, there's,
Just to add on the buses, that we went through it over the last, pick a number, 10, 12 years. We went over a few demographic changes with buses and the amount of, the type of buses we had. When we were doing a lot of homeless transports and things like that, we ended up into more Suburbans. And then we had special needs kids, and we ended up with more 30-passenger buses. And then we we've moved into having to acquire more wheelchair buses because of the students that require that service. So right now, in all the categories we have extra buses, okay? Some of that was driven by the demographics, and some of it is driven by the fact that we were building inventory in anticipation of electric buses. If electric buses goes away, that changes everything we do at that point.
Well, that's a good point that Mr. Miller's bringing up. One of the considerations is where are we? The governor has said publicly or in a couple of interviews that she's not opposed to delaying the mandate. That's one thing. You've also got to take a big consideration to your current political climate. What are we going to do? You know, things could change in a minute, and we no longer have that mandate being available. So, as school districts kind of move towards that deadline, they're trying to get buses if they really need them. But to Mr. Miller's point, you still have all that inventory.
My biggest concern is not cost with that; it's supply chain. It's getting the right stuff. It's almost like such a new technology at a mass scale, is it not? Or this stuff's pretty standard, it's available?
What's that, electric buses?
Yes, infrastructure, all that, right? I mean,
all the stuff that's
Electric buses we've been told by Central Hudson we have 4% of the electric we need here to charge buses. Okay, so that's where it starts, okay? But the technology on the buses and the issues that are having and things like that, if you can go on the web and look at Lion buses,
yes,
and the issues they're having with Lion buses in Vermont and places, it's premature. But the other side of it is that if they delay it, then we have to kind of walk that forward and see where we're going to be, because right now we're planning on 2027. So we'd have to walk that forward and look at it. And also our mentality right now is looking at buses that are purchasing buses moving forward for the future that we're going to keep longer would be buses that are less perishable, which would be the 65 passenger buses, because they're built like a truck, they're built like a bus, versus buying a Suburban or a cutaway Chevy bus that is a commercial type vehicle that won't have the same life expectancy as the Bluebirds would.
I think the issue of supply chains and the preparation for recharging stations, it's a moot issue because we're one small district of many districts in New York, and if those are the situations that exist, it's going to be statewide. So they're going to have to make exceptions.
Everybody's on the same page.
So it's not going to. We don't have to worry and try to prepare for that. The state's going to have to prepare for that.
But do we start pushing the envelope? At what point do we start? Like the Suburbans are available in battery model. Wow. What our next Suburban? Let's buy an electric one. The next. What do you think about that?
You have to get the charging
You have
facilities
to
there.
do all the
I
charging.
don't know if my neighbor could do it. I'm sure Highland Central School District could do it.
It takes an
Got
awful.
some kind of outlet.
It takes a
coming out of
long
his
time
house.
to charge a car with a regular. Let me tell you, over 24 hours just to charge my car. So picture a bus. How long it's going to take multiple batteries to charge a bus? That's a long time.
Look, here's the dollars and cents perspective. I can't support the purchase of 14 buses over a 2-year period when some of your fleet hasn't even hit 10 years, 200,000 miles or whatever, 250,000 miles. I mean, that's just right. I mean, that's just being prudent.
Right, and I'm not, this presentation not to say that you have to buy all 14. This is your fleet right you have right now. These are the ones that are maturing. We're having the conversation that says, well, what do we want to do? Do you're not going to buy 14.
That number is created by math. That number is not created by any form of
The data.
assessment.
I got you. Understood. I got you.
I have my own opinion
Thank
on
God.
what we should do, at least for this year, and hedge on next year, because by next year, there's a very good possibility, it's an election year, that whole thing might change.
You're right.
The
So
only
we can
thing,
take a look at Mr. Miller Pete saying, okay, let's look at the condition of these buses, the 55 that we have. Which ones are really close to being falling off the bubble? And that will change your perspective. Once again, once we get that information, we can provide that to you with the cost analysis that would say, well, here's the buses at 176 or 170, here's the Suburban at this price. You plug it in the spreadsheet, whichever ones you want to do, it will give you the cost that you expect for this year or next year, and you can make that determination. But
What determination? Like number of buses and stuff?
number of buses.
A
Or if you don't even want to
plan
go that
should
way.
be given to the Board of Ed or plan A, B, and C,
Well, I think
and with a recommendation. I
step
don't, why
one
are we
would be for
talking
Mr.
about?
Miller to give us a conditional
The
assessment so
people
that
who run
let's
these
go from 3
divisions
years
wanna have a
forward.
say.
How many buses you feel would age out next year? How many you feel would age out in 2 years, and how many you feel would age out in 3 years?
Oh, let them look at the data. I wouldn't
Unconditional.
ask that.
No, I'm saying a
He
conditional
doesn't-
assessment. This would be a conditional assessment. Just a speculative, but it would give us a parameter in which we could say, we don't need to buy, 7 buses. We have 3 that we anticipate are gonna age out in a year, so we make sure we replace them.
Well, we're not, in a normal situation, in a normal year, we would look at it like that.
Right.
Okay, we'd say we're anticipating these buses to drop off. We're looking at that from the viewpoint that we may have buses to drop off. And then we're also looking at it in hedging against.
I know, and I think the need to hedge
I know,
against
I'm
the
not-
electric issue isn't, I don't know that we'd have to be as concerned about that.
Right, but if you're looking for a recommendation for
Research.
what we should buy and what number of them we should buy, we could probably come back to you with that and say, this is gonna cost you X number of dollars, or whatever.
Given that we're being told that we have essentially we have a more than sufficient fleet, if not a surplus fleet at this point, I think we need to just look at the numbers and say, these are the numbers we think we will lose in the upcoming year. These are the numbers we think we'll lose in 2 years.
But we're also looking at it from the viewpoint, we're not looking at 2026, 2027. We're looking at 2032, 33.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know. I'm talking about a non-reduction of the fleet.
Right.
I'm talking about a conditional replacement of the existing fleet.
By the time you get to 2027, we're gonna have 22 of our buses 10 years or older. Looking at just what we are right now,
Well,
and then we can't purchase anymore.
we were doing what? 5?
If that stays the way it is.
But we
Right.
weren't typically
That's
buying
why-
3 to 4.
And that's half of your fleet.
That's why we were looking to add the fleet a little bit, to put ourselves in that position, so we're not looking to buy $500,000
But weren't we-
buses or more at that point in time to replace them
Weren't we
with
typically we're replacing roughly 3 to 4 a year? Wasn't that typically our?
Pretty much a combination of suburban,
It's been, yeah,
30 passenger, 65, yeah.
it's kind of been dollar driven too.
Yeah.
That was by Bernie Donegan. It was done that way also to determine how much money we were going to spend on buses.
No, it was also with the knowledge that these are, we do get state funding to help assist in the purchase, and I understand all that. But we're making a big jump from the 3 to 4 now to the 5 and 7. So if that's being done in anticipation of readying the fleet for electric, I think the electric thing will take care of itself, because it's gonna be a statewide issue, and there are gonna have to be accommodations made. So I don't know if we have to prepare a fleet to that extent. I think more if we stay in line with what we had established for the years, that making sure that we're rotating our fleet so that we don't end up with 20 buses.
When you drop out buses, what do you base it on? Do you base it on years in service, mileage, or physical wear and tear on the bus? I mean, because you could have a 2017 that has more mileage than a 2015, even though they're 2 years different in age.
So in reality, it's rarely mileage. So we don't get that
Age.
much miles, even though we have Suburbans that had 190 some miles on them, or 170,000 or something like that. It's rarely based on mileage. It's usually based on condition. Right? When I first started playing this game, we had buses that had rust issues and things, and that the inspectors didn't want. It got to the point where I don't want to see the bus. This is not going to pass anymore. So we had replaced those buses. Now we're not in that situation. We've also done certain improvements to what we buy so that they last longer and things are not rusting. But
I think our taxpayers are going to appreciate us kind of pushing these numbers a little bit down the road, because, for example, Hyde Park had gotten a grant, I guess, for 15 buses, electric buses. It still had to go before the public to vote on. They voted it down. So are they sending a message they don't want electric buses?
I don't think they don't want to pay for them.
They don't want to pay for them, but as they perform, and now they've proven they don't really perform properly in this environment in the Northeast, that I think we should go in a direction of pushing this a little bit, pushing these numbers back and taking a chance.
Purchase less.
Well, purchase, not be in such a hurry to get rid of our fossil fuel buses.
Understand, there's not really That's part of the plan. The part of the plan was what were we gonna do to hedge against electric?
Well, that's
And what
right.
the actual number is. The mathematical number came out to basically 7 buses a year. That's not necessarily the number we're gonna say that that's what you need to buy.
We should try to work with that.
We can give you
in
the,
that direction, because every time you turn around, there's something new coming about how these don't
Yeah, I
work.
think what Mr. Miller was saying was that much akin to lawnmowers when they were shifting onto electric, and everybody was buying as many gas-powered lawnmowers as they could prior to that. I think his intention was to buy as many gas-powered buses prior to not
Yeah,
being allowed to
no,
buy
that's
them anymore.
exactly, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that cutoff happening anytime soon. So I think we can just stay the course as to what we've been doing and make sure we have just a systematic replacement.
Push it a little, but, and Mike had a good idea, also, I'm sorry, with possibly a Suburban or two. You know, if we want to try the electric thing, you know, do it at that level.
So would you like us, as we go forward, my goal is to say, okay, let's get a deadline on this. By Friday, we can present you with, condition of the buses and some recommendations. If we give our recommendations to what we think you want us to purchase, is that where you want us to go? I just want to get some direction because, either way I can present the information to you. I just want to be clear as to what do you want to have from us. If it's A, give you some ideas of what buses we could possibly purchase, we'll do that. Take into consideration the condition of the buses, here's what we're going to hedge our bets with. And then scenario 1, scenario 2, maybe scenario 3. But we're giving you some idea as to what we think you would like to look at. And then you make a decision. You're not married to that, but those are just recommendations. I think that's a better approach rather than me telling you, this is what you have to do. And then we have a little bit more discussion back and forth and pulling, and then we don't get anything done. And then we have a little bit of a quandary on the 18th.
Let me
This
ask this,
information could be done by Friday.
let me ask this question, and I think community resident brought this up to some of us in past years. And a lot of them say, well, we see large school buses that are quarter capacity or half capacity. But is it a true statement to say that we are required by law to have enough capacity in the case of a catastrophe to evacuate all 3 of our buildings? Is that a true statement? You don't have to answer if you don't. I mean,
I don't
we'll
know
get,
if that's a true statement, but it is a true statement that we have to supply or have counted the seat for every child on that bus run.
Yeah, I think
Whether that child drives to school or their parents transport them,
that was the question.
it doesn't matter. There has to be a seat for that child on the bus.
100%.
That is what state mandates.
So it's potential now
well, if
versus
a
actual.
bus route only has 30 students on that route, and we're sending a 65 passenger bus, we're only required to have seating for 30 students on that route. No, okay.
It would have to be, so if our buses are full, typically. The older ones are either they're driving now. The younger ones that aren't riding sometimes are on different buses because they're going to daycares, but we do have to hold a seat on every bus, a regular bus. If that kid goes to daycare or not, they have to be on that bus route. It doesn't matter if they go on the bus over there to the daycare, the other bus has to hold a seat for them as well.
That's what reinforces that evacuation factor. Because all the kids are in school now,
The
you
same
have
way.
to.
They
Put
have a
them on a
full
bus.
elementary school run, or high school run, but it's the same bus running the route.
It's an annual number. I hear you, Al. I wish it was more dynamic. I wish there was a way to.
Yeah.
It's only 40 kids going home, get the small bus.
I wouldn't want to
It's
get
not-
caught short in that situation if we had to do some level of an evacuation.
and time of the run also is considering how long you pick up. If you were looking at it from the viewpoint of maximum utilization of a bus and putting 60 kids on it, the run would be longer than the time allotted to get the kids to school.
You have children on the bus for an hour.
But the evacuation piece would be, these students are in school.
Yeah.
We're gonna run 55 buses out to pick them up, not necessarily take them home, take them to a safe location.
Correct.
That's the evacuation piece of it. So it doesn't matter what route they're on, we're just loading students on a bus and evacuate.
And staff.
So, and staff. So that's why we need the capacity. I mean, is that, I thought I heard that somewhere, I'm just trying to reinforce, that's the reason why we have large school buses because we have to maintain capacity to evacuate to a safe location, entire staff and
The
students.
answer's yes, but in a routine, you're never transporting 100% of your kids at any one given time.
No,
It's
transporting
always 1,000, right? It's
On a
always half.
day-to-day run, but I'm talking about an evacuation.
Like that. I thought you were going after, is our fleet the right size for the student
Well,
population, right?
that's part of it. We got
we're down
30
300 kids over the last few years, but we need more buses, or the fleet's the same number of buses. I haven't really looked at it.
We have 39 large capacity buses, 65 passenger buses out of a fleet of 55. So we only got 16 that are small capacity.
Yeah.
And the questions to me at times in the last couple of years is
You have
why
asked.
why am I seeing a 65 passenger bus with 10 kids on it or 20 kids on it?
Because you're at the end of the run and they dropped everybody
Yeah,
off.
that's my answer to them, but I
But
think
that
that's
also, that also comes, Mr. Earl, that also comes back to the cost of running a bus, the age of the bus, the sustainability of the bus versus everything you're doing with it in relationship to using like a 30-passenger Chevrolet bus that is definitely gonna last 10 years maybe, versus a Bluebird that you could potentially get 12, 13, 14, 15 out of it. You decide your cost in mile and you come out that the cost per mile for a Bluebird is less than it would be for a Chevy.
makes sense. So we need a decision by March 18th or a special meeting before April 1st. Is that the deadline?
Well,
There's some unanswered questions first,
Okay.
but is that the deadline?
So the legal notice has to be in between April 4th and
45 days prior to
Right.
the election.
So I was gonna put the legal notice in April 7th. So you have a meeting April 1st. So it would have to that would be the latest.
Okay.
So those numbers
But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong though. The legal notice has to be done. It's on the back
Well,
of
we
the.
could secure all that info. Heather, you said something
Sure.
about 2027. What's going on in that year?
April 1st, we have a board meeting.
My point was just
No, we have April 1st,
up
we
here
have a
it
board
says,
meeting.
By
2027, you
2027.
can't purchase any more.
Yeah,
And if we look at the 10-year, the age of our fleet, by 2027, if we do nothing this year, I'm just looking at, you will have 22 of your 53 buses over 10 years old.
Yeah, I don't think we should do, I think if we stay by the plan we had originally to replace systematically.
It's not the April 1st, it's 45 days. From which meeting?
No, to the budget vote, which is May 20th or something like that.
Yes. So the legal notice has
Gotta
to
back up
be
45
in
days from there.
by April 4th
Yeah,
or
right.
April
We can
10th.
get
I
the
was
data.
scheduling.
I can get,
All the data's
So it's
available.
I
45
can
days
get data
prior
to
to
everybody this week and next, and then I think we can make this decision on the 18th.
Right, because
Those numbers
just in
were
case
driven by
something
you.
should.
Just a couple clarifications, and I think they'll have all the information they need to go back and do a little bit more work and, come up with a plan. Am I the only one? What size are those passenger vans, those little ones? Did it say 30?
30. The Suburbans and then.
Are those available in electric model? The 30 passenger
So,
van?
they are.
They are.
There is, a bus company that is taking fossil fuel buses and taking the drivetrain out of them and turning them over to electric and selling them. Makes a lot of sense, but that's what they're doing.
Is that my only option, or I could buy a 30
So our situation.
electric 30 passenger bus
Right now, if,
on state contract?
this is my opinion at this point in time, that the Suburbans and the smaller buses are more perishable than the other buses, and we have enough of them at this point in time that there is probably no reason to buy a Suburban or a 30-passenger bus within the immediate future because of the units that we have that aren't being used at this point as spare because of demographics change.
Okay.
That being said, those numbers could be shifted where we were buying, say, 3 diesel and 1 propane bus this year, and the larger buses, and then bring 26 down to say 6 propane buses. I'm just saying to create a certain amount of equity from year to year.
Are any of the vehicles other than the 65 passenger bus diesel?
So we got away from diesel and went to propane, okay? We have kept diesel buses, so we had some buses that could go long range because you can't get propane on the road. We are looking at, as we settle this all out, that the buses we're gonna buy now, if we bought them, they would be gasoline, so they would still have long range, okay? And the maintenance cost on them is slightly more than the propane buses. The fuel economy is better, and the maintenance cost is less than a diesel.
Just wonder if there's any benefit to, there's 6 diesel buses within the next few years trying to get rid of, at least doing away with the diesel.
Pretty much all the school bus companies are, the people that are buying school districts are staying away from gasoline powered diesel powered buses.
Oh, I see. Well, I was, we may not need them next year, possibly the following year. I think as far as Suburbans, we start pushing electric. It gets us to dabble in the infrastructure a little bit, pushes you guys out of your comfort zone. If this comes down the pike, or, look, it's going to be a consideration in the future. I mean, electricity's not going away, nor electric vehicles. They're just ramping up. So, if we could use this next Suburban purchase this year, next year, whenever it happens, to dabble into some electric vehicle, I recommend we do it. But in the meantime, as far as, do you have all the information you need to come up with a plan? Because it sounds like some of the buses that are on that plan aren't necessarily going to be needed for next
I
year.
believe we have the information to come up with a plan. We have basically my data, which is basically straight accounting data, zeros and ones. Here's the inventory. Here's the years they're going to materialize X, Y, Z. We have to pull in Kathy and we have to pull in Mr. Miller to say, okay, let's look at the demographics of those buses. Let's really look at it from a different perspective and then give you another analysis that says, here are the buses that are actually they're not going to make it. Even though they're 10 years or so forth, they're not going to make it. Let's put those on the list. And then we'll give you a better analysis of what we think should be purchased. I think once we've done that, you'll have a better idea.
So the state hasn't incentivized any of the subsidies. They're straight across the board, regardless of the mode.
The state has put out certain grants if you want to buy electric buses, and you have to, go through that process.
Okay.
They'll try and entice you to do that. I don't know the dollars that they're really giving. I will call my contacts in New York who have actually purchased electric buses and see how that works. But you'll go through that whole grant process, and then that's them enticing you to do it. But once again, what's your infrastructure? So we buy the Suburban, pretty, and how are we going to plug it in? Where do we plug it in? We drive all the way down the road and plug it in and then drive back.
I'm just curious, given, like I said, there's a grant, I wonder if there are grants available for creating the infrastructure or there's state incentivized modes of creating that.
There is.
So maybe we need to be looking at that as well.
But we don't have anything to plug it into. Not the bus, the infrastructure.
No, that's what I mean, because you were saying the grid is only 4%.
Correct.
Right, okay.
You would need a level 2 and a level 3 charger.
You have
which
connections, do
on-
something.
And I think that was, and just to go to your point, I think that was the conversation that we had when we met with the Central Hudson representative, NYSERDA, Pete, myself, Kathy, and Lindsay when she was here. And at the end of that, it did not prove to be something that was going to be beneficial to us cost-wise because of the electricity not being there. The grid, so to speak. So yes, some districts are NYSERDA is offering grants, but it's in pockets. It depends on where the infrastructure is already out there. And then there are districts that get the grants, as Mr. Miller said, that there are aspects that still need to be voter approved. And if the voters don't vote for it, then you lose the grant. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just applying for the grant.
Let me put this out to the whole board so we can give Desmond, Peter, and Kathy some direction to move forward. Will we support a replacement plan that's going to purchase 14 school buses in 2 years?
I'm a no. Throw another year on there.
If we're being told
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
number
say,
isn't,
another year.
required, and that, I think another year would probably be good.
So the board is not in favor of replacing 14 school buses. So your proposal coming back to us is going to be,
Less than the 14.
yeah, not 13 either.
Well, I mean, I think the first proposal that was there last week was the 2 buses and then the, I forget what the other vehicle was. So, you know, are we going much higher than what that cost was?
So I think where we went is we went from the suggestion that maybe we buy more in anticipation of, so we put together the data that says this is where we are. Now we can back off of that and say, what did we feel comfortable with? I think that's where our goal is.
Yeah, it was my recommendation at the last board meeting that with that date of 2027 coming around the corner, what is our plan to kind of
Right.
work
And
into that?
again,
You're for increased sustainability, but
Yeah, I mean, I did some research over the last week, and if you Google electric school buses in some of the districts in New York State, there's quite a few of them that have already dabbled in
I think we need to
electric
start
buses, and they're
dabbling,
very
do a little
happy with it.
research and development.
But, you know, it's 1 or 2, yeah, you're gonna be happy. Bring in a whole fleet over time, are you gonna be happy with it? Is the infrastructure gonna be able to support it? You got all those to answer. And then my biggest concern, and Mr. Miller being a fire chief and knows a lot more than I do about electric vehicles, what's the safety factor in these electric vehicles when we're putting possibly 1,200 students on these buses? Nobody has addressed that piece yet. And that could be a serious concern. That's my concern. Kathy, do you
I
want
just
to?
want to say, and also, you know, everybody's training, from the mechanics to the drivers to myself. We would all have to be retrained, so I just wanted to put that
There's a
out there.
lot that, you know, I'm sure the governor's going to massage that mandate a little bit, but I don't think she's going to change it much.
As Mike was pointing out, I think the place to start would be the smaller vehicles, because obviously we've got a lot of data on electric Suburbans and electric vehicles on a smaller scale. We've seen safety reports, we know the risks, and that data's all come out. It would be a lot easier to create an infrastructure for that. For those, I think we start to dabble in that fashion and then continue with this plan of replacing the propane and diesel.
Did you say dabble? That's my.
And I
Dabble.
think that
You can't.
that also brings the next question, is I think the next capital project has to focus on some of that infrastructure. If the dabbling is gonna happen, you're not gonna be able to just plug them into what is currently.
I think we'll have a better view
Available.
of where the state's going at that point and where the country as a whole is choosing to.
But we also know how long it takes to plan a capital project, so that might be conversations that support services is gonna wanna start sooner than later. I don't know when we wanna do that next project, but those conversations need to start now if we're gonna get to that endpoint.
We're making a lot of these decisions on the electric buses, relegating them to still being here on this property. Is there any areas, any corridors, anywhere that would be easier to put a garage there, less infrastructure that has to be built?
Was there an area where
Well, that would be-
buildings?
that
would
would
be
be a
placed?
conversation that would have to be with, in some degree, with Central Hudson as to its proximity to higher levels of power.
That's what I'm saying,
like that.
another location off-site,
A
which
driver
has
parking
its
lot,
own issues.
yeah, storage facility.
It might in the future be a shared service with, because I'm sure, the town's gonna go electric vehicles for their
Agreed.
small, and then they create a centralized
Central Hudson.
charging area. But that's gonna be years down the road, I think, but it's a good point.
But I think even Central Hudson, thank you for being a representative, kind of, but they've tried that with a couple of their big line trucks, correct?
You have 2 line trucks.
You have 2, and can they each operate fully every day, or is there a trade-off?
There's a trade-off, for
Yeah,
sure. We did install high power.
that's just a minor
High-power
example of what
chargers.
these vehicles can and cannot do at this moment in time.
At this point, Central Hudson's focusing on having the apparatus be electrically run, not necessarily a full motor
Right.
being electric.
But you guys also have a full fleet of other electric vehicles. Which
Smaller
makes sense.
vehicles?
Yeah, smaller vehicles, that's what it is. Correct. But, you know, it's just different thinking, you know, a location
So
somewhere
they're a
else.
good partner to tap into
You
for
know.
any future discussions, I think, is what Mr. Rose said.
Yeah, and I guess my just thought for kind of plan going forward, right? I think two, you know, I was surprised at just even looking at this, right? There's five saying that with the 10 years, not considering the qualitative factors, which is critically important as well, but it's 5 in 25, 9 of them in 2026, 8 in 2027. I don't think 2 keeps us where we need to be. Do I say 14? No, but I think we need to be somewhere a little bit higher. Just my thoughts.
All right,
Hmm?
we're good.
We're good. So basically, we've kind of went through the topics of discussion for quite some time. I think we've addressed all the topics of discussion. We talked about the budget gap, and we talked about what we did with the bus memorandum. We're very clear on the direction we're going to go. The next scheduled board meeting is March 18th. And of course, I always end with the calendar that tells us what we have to do. I will say thank you. I'm glad we had the discussion. Now we have clear directions about what we can present to you.
I think the last discussion that the board should have, give Desmond and the superintendent some direction. We only probably have 2 to 3 more meetings before we have to make a budget decision, unless we have special meetings. So what areas would you like to see to close that gap? Are we gonna look to tap into some of our reserves, fund balance that we used in the past, or are you looking for any other avenues of any other areas that we can cut that gap? I mean, it's unfortunate, I've said this the last 4 or 5 years, that we as a board can never really look to proceed with any new initiatives. You know, it seems like we're always now looking to where can we make the cuts. I know when I first got on the board, the first good bunch of years, we were always looking for initiatives because we had the opportunity to do it. But fortunately now it's where can we cut to meet the budget. But if you have some new initiatives, something that's minor that you might want to throw out there and it could be possibly put into the budget, that's one way. But I think we have to give Desmond and the rest of the administrative team some guidelines of where we might want to be comfortable going to bridge that gap. So,
And then if I could just add, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'd like you to add whatever.
I was just gonna add in, I know one of the things that was mentioned earlier is possible retirements. I don't see many retirements coming my way. If we look at those that are eligible, that date has passed. Those that are eligible, first eligible without penalty. So those folks have not come forward. I do see a larger number of folks first eligible without penalty coming up in the next 2 years. Whether or not they take that, I don't know that, but I do see some cost savings over the next 2 years, whereas if you remember when we had this conversation 2 years ago, Lindsay said, we're gonna have 2 difficult years. The only other thing that I would caution the board, I really don't think that the district can afford to go through what we went through last year with, and we will go through that process if that's what the will of the board is, but we took a scalpel to the staff last year and made some major decisions that were not easy to do. I don't know that we have the capacity to do that kind of savings 2 years in a row. So just as a
Right.
No, you're right.
So there was a diagram there that had some of these categories on there. I would say that I'm not supportive of really looking at personnel unless that's an unfilled position and it's been for years and that's been absorbed some other way. Reserves is going to be a last discussion because we certainly like to see, let's take a look at, are we too conservative in some of our perspectives? Are there other savings that can be garnered? Do the aid numbers are pretty firm at this point, and then we'll take a look at what we have. I
The
mean,
biggest number there was the debt, but we can't do anything about that. That's already
Yeah,
there. We can't
yeah.
manipulate that.
just to
yeah,
add
but
in
the
there,
exercise is close $1 million, and I believe it's doable without touching personnel.
I would hope so. And materials and supplies, we have cut that back tremendously.
We're still running a
And-
school for
That's right.
children here, absolutely. And I'll tell you about costs. They've gone up, not down.
Yep.
So savings just get reinvested back into program, which is what we'd like to see.
And then just really selfishly on my part, we don't necessarily need a full-time data administrator, but we do need some data assistance. So that would be one thing that somehow, whether it's stipendable, something, just put that on your radar, because that is taking away from the work that we're able to get done in the district office. So not a full-time administrator though, so I'm not looking to put that back in. I told you that administration would take on some of that, but it's I think it's critical.
You need to look at another clerical up there in central
Possibly.
office. This is not a new conversation.
Yep.
Certainly between you and I, but yeah, there's some things to look at still, but certainly not as bleak as last year. And
Desmond,
we bridged these gaps before.
We have.
you don't have to answer this tonight, but will you have any suggestions as to where that gap might be closed? I mean, given that you're the closest to those books.
I'll have to work through that. I wouldn't probably do that right now.
No, I wouldn't ask you to do it right now.
No, there's a couple of areas we can make, like I said before, there are expenses we can reduce, but they're not gonna come down significantly enough without giving some assistance from other areas. And I think that's kind of the direction I need to see if the board is gonna go with.
And then I'll chime in also about the BOCES number. So last year, again, we took the scalpel to that as well. So a lot of the services that we were, if we don't need them, we're not gonna buy them, that's for sure. But there are services that we can get aid on that now we're finding that we're having to purchase without that aid because we're purchasing it in-house. So some of that might be beneficial for us to get back in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we run the numbers on those. that'd be
So
good.
that when we get that refund from BOCES in that following year when the aid flows, right now we took a hit there because we cut so much out over the last couple of years. But rightly so. There were things that we weren't using that were in there that we took a hard look at each and every line and cut things
But that is
as we
something,
saw.
those are predictable numbers. Or are you saying that, I
Correct.
mean, because we can now see what we lost in indirect payment as opposed to stuff that would be reimbursable. We
Correct.
take those numbers and we assume we borrow from reserves and in essence return them through the refunds we would gain in BOCES. We could look at that dynamic and see if that would
Yep.
work.
It's one of the ways.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Desmond. All right, our consent items, EA.1 to C.3. As usual, if you want to pull one out, you can. If you need any clarification on any of the items in our consent agenda, just shout it out. Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion before we take the vote. Motion to accept our consent items. Motion by Heather, second by Ed. Pretty simple consent.
Yeah.
It's the shortest one in months.
Right?
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just make sure you recognize Smiley down there.
Any abstentions? So carried. And as Mr. Captions said, let's recognize Mr.
Smiley.
Zimmer for 11 years with the district, moving himself up from assistant principal at the high school to principal and as a assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. I think 10 years that I've been on the board with you, I think you're well deserving of retirement. I think you did a job well done, and we appreciate your time here in the district.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of us in this room would like to follow in your footsteps.
So what's next? You going to Disneyland?
I'm going to Disneyland. Thinking about taking a gap year and travel a little
Yeah,
bit.
there you go.
Find myself before deciding what's next.
All right. We don't have any new hires right now. Okay, Mr. Zimmer, you're up.
Excellent. I have 2 items to share with you this evening. First is the half-day superintendent's conference day on February 14th. Provided faculty and staff some professional learning focused on instruction, student support, and community building. Some of the high school sessions covered textbook use, reading journals, and integrating art into daily instruction. And department meetings analyzed Regents data and special education programming. At the middle school, the staff explored ADHD and support strategies for students with ADHD. And at the elementary school, the faculty and staff attended a presentation on student belonging and inclusivity. Participants engaged in some pretty good professional development that afternoon. I was very happy with it. Next, it's time to talk about our UPK program. It is that time of year that the district is inviting proposals from local preschools who are interested in participating in our UPK program for the 25-26 school year. So local preschools wishing to apply should submit a letter of intent by Friday, March 14th, and full proposals are due by the end of March. It should be noted that existing partner agencies are only required to submit a letter of intent and do not need to submit a full proposal this year. Letters and proposals may be dropped off or mailed to the superintendent's office, where they will be put on my desk. And very important to say that any parents of preschool age children, more information about our UPK program for the upcoming school year will be available as soon as we can provide that. So just as in the past 2 years, right around April, there'll be information that goes out to the community for anyone who wants to put in for, if we have to have a lottery, it all depends on how many seats we'll be able to offer. I anticipate that it looks like the numbers from New York State are pretty similar as far as the grants provided to the district, pretty similar to this past year. So I anticipate that the numbers will be similar. But we have to wait and see what our local participant, the preschools, can commit to. So there'll be more information at upcoming board meetings.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Dr. Boyd?
We are up and running with our annual reviews. As always, a big thank you to all the staff for their flexibility in planning and adjustments on the go. As you know, there's always some cancellations and rescheduling. So a big thank you to everyone for their flexibility there. Each year, as part of the state performance plan, we are monitored in a different area. This year, we are monitored. They take a look at students who exit us, who are students with disabilities, and what they're doing a year out from leaving us. So we've been working with those families, letting them know that the state's going to be reaching out to them and helping facilitate some of the communication. So they'll be looking out to them, getting feedback. And then we would hopefully in turn get some feedback if there's anything that we can do to better prepare our students as they exit from us. As you might have seen on Facebook, on our Facebook page, it is National Social Workers Week. So a quick plug for all the great work that our school social workers do individually with students and groups of students and behind the scenes to help support the mental health needs of our students. So, a big thank you to them. And just looking ahead, I know Mr. Zimmer talked about our Superintendent's Conference Day from February. We have another one coming up in May. A big part of our May Superintendent's Conference Day is kindergarten screening. So we have started our planning for that and trying to find ways to streamline the process, make it a very exciting day for our incoming kindergarten students and getting them all set up for when they come to us in September. That's it for me.
Any questions? Thank you, Patrick.
Yep.
And our superintendent.
Okay, so you all received an email earlier today. So very excitedly, our girls varsity basketball team has moved forward to quarterfinals. That quarterfinal game set by Section 9 happens to be the same night as our scholarship instrumental concert. So this was a very, very difficult decision to make, but our girls earned home field advantage. So we did make that decision, or I should say I made that decision today to move our scholarship instrumental concert to our previously scheduled snow/emergency date, which is March 17th, so that our girls can play here at the high school on their home court. They will be playing Marlboro this Wednesday at 6 p.m. And we're expecting pretty large crowds from what the folks have told me. So, people have asked me, why didn't we move things to the middle school? Unfortunately, the middle school only has half the number of bleachers, so it would not work there. Also, our parking is a lot more limited at the middle school. The same thing came up earlier today. How come we don't move the scholarship concert to the middle school? The scholarship concert for instrumental is a grade 5 through 12 concert where they sit in the round. It is pretty spectacular. I know you've all attended that in the past. And one member of the community said maybe limit the number of folks that can attend. I don't really want to limit the number of folks that can attend to see their children perform. So it was a lot of soul searching today. I apologize to anyone who feels that this was a short-sighted decision on my part. I can tell you it was not. And I looked at our mission statement over and over again today, and at the bottom, students are the priority. So I am leaning on, and I will take any heat that anyone wants to give me, but every student is important in our district, and I made the decision so that every student can shine. That scholarship concert is going to move so that they have a night where they're not competing with a basketball game. The basketball team is going to get their due presence here at our high school, and I'll just take whatever heat is going to come my way because I've been taking it all day. But with that said,
Criticism making it go. I
That's
support the decision wholeheartedly.
I support it as well.
the rest of my so again, the girls' quarterfinal is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the Highland High School gymnasium. And then just going with the rest of our calendar, we have parent-teacher conferences Thursday evening at the elementary school. And then on Friday, there are no students in attendance, so that parent-teacher conferences can happen from 8 to 11 a.m. district-wide. Scholarship concerts, so with that one moved, our next scholarship concert is on Wednesday the 12th. That will be our choral concert, which takes place in the auditorium. And then on Monday the 17th, the band will be in the round in Highland High School's gymnasium. We approved at the couple board meetings ago now the new cell phone policy. I sent that policy out to the parents. That is to go into effect on Monday the 17th. The building administrators are working on hosting a session for parents to go over those expectations, and they will be having assemblies to go over what the policy is and the expectations and consequences. So we're moving those consequences forward because they are in line with our code of conduct. When we do the code of conduct review for July 1, we will have a separate section just for this, so it will be spelled out, just the way it is in the documents that you've all received. I know Desmond's already mentioned it. Budgeting is a nonstop process this time of year, so a coordinated effort between buildings, departments, central office. We're trying to find the greatest savings without impacting student programming, and that was my plea before. I don't want to cut into programming, and programming is done by staff. So we will continue that again tomorrow morning. And so some other good things coming up. We have a high school musical coming up at the end of the month of March 28th and 29th. The Addams Family will be going on here at Highland High School, and there will be a flyer in my Friday update for you to take a look at. And then the last thing, the Highland Education Foundation dinner is on May 9th from 6 to 10 p.m. at Indian Ridge. $65 per person. This is posted on our website and our Facebook page. I know the Board of Education, I've given that to you in my Friday update, so please reach out to Becky Ochmoody if you plan on attending. And I got word this afternoon that I'm able to announce who the recipients are of the awards so that they can join the the Highland Hall of Fame wall in the back here, and also outside the auditorium. So the Husky Pride Award is going to former teacher Mary Beth Sasso, was a second grade teacher for many years at the elementary school. And the alumni awards are going to Fred DeMeo and Jean Rizzo. So, did you know that?
No.
Oh. Now you know.
Thank you.
All right. So we congratulate all of those folks, and we look forward to having a fun-filled evening of fellowship and raising money for the foundation. So.
Good. Any questions
Any
for the superintendent?
questions?
Thank you, Joel. Okay, moving on, Board of Education, new business. Highland Central School District School Board candidate nominating petitions are due to Lisa by March 10th, beginning March 10th, they're due by April 21st. And the following vacancies, which expires on June 30th, 2025, are to be filled. Currently, they're held by Janine Demmel and Tom Miller. In term of office, 3 years, blah, 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 blah. So anybody out there that's interested in running for a highly paid position can submit their name to Lisa Semiglia, District Clerk. All right, next is the highly anticipated building use discussion. The support service met last week. Myself, Tom Miller, Ed was out of town working. Peter Miller, Frank Alfonso, Desmond, and Joel were present, and we had discussion revolving around the community use of school facilities, particularly the turf field, the new turf field, and our concession stand. And we've been having some feedback from community organizations, and I know a lot of board members have been in contact with some over the last year or so of why can't we use some of the school facilities and why are we restricted with the insurance requirements, blah, 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 blah. Number one, with the insurance requirements, that's not, and I want to be perfectly clear, that's not a requirement generated by the Highland Central School District Board of Education or the administrative staff of the Highland Central School District. That comes down from our insurance carrier. They set those requirements. We are abiding by those requirements. Some board members, some community members have said it, and we've heard it, that why does other districts allow the community members to utilize fields and they don't have, or facilities, and they don't have to have the restricted insurance requirements. It is up to each individual school district. This Board of Education can waive some of those requirements. Is it in the best interest of the district to protect our entity? I would say no, but we can tweak some of it. We can eliminate some of it. Not totally, but we can do something like that. So I hope the community understands it's not Joel Freer, not Desmond, and it's not every one of us that's saying you can't use the field because you got to meet these requirements. We're told that these are the insurance requirements that are needed to utilize any of our facilities. And it doesn't matter if it's an outside community group or a group that's internal to the district. So I want to be clear with that because I've heard a lot about it that, you know, our business officials being too tough on us, we're being tough on the community. We are, because we're following the requirements of our carrier. We had a major disaster in the middle school and our insurance carrier did not blink an eye. They didn't blink one eye. They purchased TVs, they purchased smart boards, they purchased everything for us. They didn't blink an eye. So we're just following their recommendation. But again, it's up to the board. So with that being said, we met last week. We brainstormed a lot of ideas. We asked our director of facilities to put together a draft policy, and it's a draft, and it's not cast in stone yet. And like I said earlier to some board members, that this is a discussion within the board, and we make the final decision on how we want the community to use our fields. So I know you got it on Friday. There's quite a bit here. But then if you go to our current policy, a lot of it reflects our current policy. And, you know, the first statement is based on our current policy that we're encouraging the community to utilize our facilities. But again, we're encouraging them to utilize the facilities within the parameters that we set forth. So we're not denying anyone, but they have to follow some rules and regulations, and that's the unfortunate thing. So we did have some community groups, come forward and ask if they can rent a field or rent the facility. I think the consensus of the support service at that point was that we're not in the rental business. So I don't know if that's something that you want to start discussion on, if you feel that we're not in the rental business, or do you feel that we can, with proper restrictions, rent some of our facilities? But coming out of the support service, that wasn't an avenue we wanted to go down. So we'll open up that discussion
Did
right
they
now.
define the word rent? Because I feel like that's a very loosely interpreted.
It was put as rent or lease. I mean, if you get an outside group that has maybe 10% residents of the district within that group, and they want to rent middle school basketball court for a Saturday to have games or whatever, or a tournament or whatever, are we in the position to do that?
Well,
That's one example. There's probably a ton of examples. I don't think we're in that position.
I think we also have to define in this draft. I saw in many places the word local. So when you talk about a local group or a local organization, what exactly are you? Because if there's groups who are asking to rent, then and they're like 10% of our community, then what does local represent? Is it just people from Lloyd? Because Highland also has Plattekill and Milton and other parts where we have students who attend there. So I think in this we have to define local so that those organizations and those groups know whether or not that they're encompassed in the word local. And I also think, like, again, I would like to know what they're referring to when they say rent. If an organization wants to come in and use the facility, you know, every Saturday from 10 to 2, and there's no Highland activities that are going on, why would we not allow that opportunity to that outside organization?
Well, I just thought we could use an arbitrary scenario. And don't hold me to it. I'm going to take the Girl Scouts. Girl Scouts want to have a fundraiser. They want to have a vendor affair, crafts and whatever. They want to utilize our middle school gymnasium. It's going to be a major fundraiser for them. There's only 10 Girl Scouts from the community that are in this organization. They want to rent it because they're going to make a fundraiser. So they're going to come in, they're going to have outside vendors, sell them goods. And let's say they raise $10,000. We're going to rent the facility for whatever. That's, I think, is what the support service is trying to stay away from. We're not denying the community group from using the facility, but if they're going to benefit from it with a major fundraiser, and we're bringing outside people into our facilities, I don't know. I mean, we did it in the past with the Christmas Craft Fair years ago, and that was a tremendous fundraiser, but it was well organized and such. It might not be the right scenario, but that's the point we're trying to make. If a sports organization wants to hold a tournament and they're going to bring in outside groups to participate, is that what we're in? We're in the rental business, or we're going to support our locals if they want to bring local teams in to have a tournament. It's hard to explain what we're looking at as rental. I mean,
So I guess that's where I'm confused, because say one of our many booster clubs decide that they want to host a tournament here to raise money for the Booster Club, which benefits an athlete organization within the school. Are we gonna say no to them? Like, that's where I'm saying, like, defining local and defining outside and what qualifies.
That's a whole different subject. We're talking about renting it. We're not gonna rent it to that group. They're gonna come in, they're gonna organize that fundraiser. We're not renting the facility to them. Once we start saying rent or lease, anybody can come in and say, I wanna lease your facility to play basketball.
But the Booster Club is outside of the school. Like, the Booster Clubs are out, it's a separate identity.
Community.
So
But it's a
but
community
that's
that
what
wouldn't
I'm,
be,
So I
they would
guess
only be
it's
paid-
just
yeah.
a distinction of what is community and what's not. So is
That's
it
what I'm
50% of
saying.
your
You have to
organization as part of
define it.
Highland, or is it?
Al's
Well, we're not
distinction
on that topic yet. We're on the rent lease
is the
issue.
Booster Club wouldn't be paying for the facility, they would merely be
Do we
paying.
I think
support
they-
rent and
I think
lease?
they go-
why
I
wouldn't a
think they go
Booster
hand in
Club
hand.
pay to use the facility?
They'd be paying for the maintenance. and
They're our
for-
community group.
Yeah, so I think this was part of what I took umbrage with the last time, was that we had this, we wanted to make sure that our facilities, to the best of our ability, were available to our community. Whether it be, whatever facility says the community are the taxpayers, we want to make sure that these facilities are accessible to them. And that's why the issue of insurance came up, and I can see why the insurance is important. And I'd like to still further explore how we might be able to find a means of finding an instrument that can help smaller community groups that may not have access to $1 million umbrella policies or $2 million or $5 million. But I think Al's point here is that the Booster Club is part of our community, and they wouldn't be paying a rental fee. They would merely have to, under the normal tenants, they would have to make sure that the maintenance engineers that come in to clean up, or the janitorial engineers that are here, that they would be accommodated, but they wouldn't be actually paying for the facility. That's part of their
I think
community.
it's covered under authorized events. The type of activity starts to lead into the types of groups who would have priority. School activities, school-connected activities,
And on top of that, it would also be
municipal use.
potential cafeteria people.
Yeah.
If they're
And those
equipment
would
would be in the.
those are the ones with the financial responsibility, but that's
That's
not
what I'm
renting.
saying.
I think when we take on a landlord-tenant relationship, then we also have further liabilities and we have responsibilities that become, that creates a whole different.
I'm not in the rental aspect of
Wouldn't be it.
the schools, and I'll tell you why. We're a non-for-profit municipality. I'm for access, and they should be able to use it. But the problem is, we have one school per level. If you have a few schools, like if something goes wrong because of that use, and it affects our Monday through Friday, that's a problem. It's a problem to me. And you talk about the policing. You're talking about resources and supervision that's already stretched, and you're going to stretch it further without a model of how you're going to manage this additional activity. So that's just some words on rental. But when it gets to the field particularly, I'll tell you, this is a new facility to us, and it takes a few years to learn how to manage a facility, how to maintain it, how to in keeping. And I believe with a district I'm familiar with to the south, the first few years of the field were really a hands-off type of situation. We wanted it for competition play. We wanted to make sure we learned how to maintain it, all the nuances of it. And once the capacity increased, there was a little more openness to renting that facility or making it available for outside of school use and that kind of thing. So, as far as the turf field and that, I'm kind of, my feeling should be it's off limits. It's still under warranty. We got to make sure what we're doing stays within warranty, that we watch it and address it and learn how to maintain it for a year or two. And then, we'll see where we're at.
I just to go back to the leasing, I think in the past, and I don't know if they still have requested, but I think we had that Broadway, 90s Broadway production that wanted to utilize our facilities at one point in time. But I think the discussion for the support service was strictly on the new facility, the new turf field, and the restrictions on that. But we can go right around. You're in favor of renting or leasing any of our facility, any of the turf facility, really is what's in question right now. we can talk about other facilities,
Maybe a hard
rent or
no on
lease
that,
later on.
year 1, 2.
I still don't understand when you talk about an outside organization. So what about
I think
youth cheerleading, youth lax, youth football, youth baseball?
They're not an outside organization. They're Highland.
Aren't they
Youth
Highland
football.
Youth Football and Highland?
And Highland Babe Ruth. They're Highland community members. They're most of them. I'm going to say 90% of their parents are taxpayers.
I understand that. So then, like, when you say no, are you talking about like a complete organization that has absolutely nothing to do with Highland?
Yeah,
I guess
say-
I'm not understanding.
What if a marching band? You see the Memorial Day parade. There's marching bands that come. What if they wanted to use our turf field to practice because they were going down to some football game and they wanted to utilize a field to know where their positions are going to be? Are we going to lease it to an organization that's coming from a different community to utilize our turf field so they can practice their marching band unit because they're going to a college football game and performing at halftime? I think that's what we're looking at as an outside group.
Yeah.
And I get that. I think that that's a clear example, right? I think there's some gray though in terms of what is rent and what is a community group, right? Like you give an example of Girl Scouts. It's not Highland Girl Scouts, but it's probably Girl Scouts troop whatever, which is based in Highland, New York. So I think that's just where it probably gets gray in terms of what's community use versus what's rent. And I think that's probably the biggest question that I would have.
But let me emphasize again, I mean, this draft is for the turf field.
Yep.
So that's what we got to focus on, the turf field. That's what our discussion is for the turf field. I think we have policy and we've dealt with other organizations wanting to utilize, the gymnasium, the auditorium for whatever. But it's strictly, right now the turf field, and I don't think we're in a position to rent the turf field out there.
And I think the important thing to remember is, should an exceptional case arise, the board can convene.
Absolutely.
And they can alter, the board can make a decision to change that, should there be an exceptional situation that we want to make provisions for. I think to Tom's earlier point, the idea, and Michael's, is the idea is to protect the investment of the community right now in this.
In its infancy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like we should rent out the field to anybody in New York State or the Northeast. I'm saying that the field, we put it forward for our community so that our community can use the field. I just want to make sure that our community, again, let's define that, from 4 years old all the way up to 444 years old, if they are part of the Highland community, they are allowed to use that field, because that is what we put forth, is for our community to be able to use that field. So that should be for cheerleading, that could be for dance, that should be for baseball, softball, anything, any community member that wants to be able to use this field. That's what I want to make sure, is that our community is able to use that field.
And item 2, priority uses, we addressed that. The following sets of priorities for group use in district field: school activities, school connected activities, municipal use, particularly for recreational activities for children and youth, and other local groups. So we've addressed those groups that can utilize it, and we're not charging them. We're not renting the field to them.
But we're also setting standards
Yes.
to be expected.
So any local
Oh, God,
group
so-
can utilize that field. And then we went into how we're going to prioritize, the use and the organizations and what the guidelines are going to be, so forth and so on.
There's a hierarchy.
And a lot of it follows what's in our policy as far as what can and cannot be used on the field, which is our general requirements. I think the gist of the conversation was that we were going, it's all spelled out in this draft, that we were going to allow, we were going to have no leasing or renting. Community groups can use the turf field for this year, Saturdays and Sundays, for games only. The small practice turf field can be used by all the sports organizations as long as they follow the proper facilities use form, and they carry the insurance and all those requirements. Baseball, soccer, lacrosse, football can all utilize that practice turf field, as long as it's not being in use by our school athletic department or phys ed department, those given days.
But we also stated that, like we said, the new turf field, the big field, that is for district use. I think district use takes priority.
Yep.
Okay. At the same time, I think if we're ever to let somebody like plan ahead that we needed, we let another group use that field, all of a sudden we realize, oh, schedules changed within the varsity level and JV level. We need that field. So I think we got the right to
I
bump.
think that's
And
common in most other school districts
just-
who have a field, is that it always goes to
Right,
the priority
but-
to the
but
school
I think
district.
even after the fact, if we set something up, hopefully it never happens, that you got a right to bump somebody. If that happens, if you get to that point.
Right. And Mike made a good point with their facility down south of us, that the first couple of years, they just wanted to get their feet wet and see where they were going with it. So I think it's a good opportunity right now that we're not going to deny any of our youth organizations to utilize the turf field for a particular sport or whatever, as long as it's available and they fill the proper building use form, facility use form, and they carry the insurance and so forth. That spells out what we want to do for the turf field.
But even that, with the other facilities, the ancillary facilities like the concession stand and stuff like that, even with a community group, there still potentially could be a charge for a cafeteria person in that facility. I think we give them a little relief if they come in with a certificate from the Board of Health.
Correct.
But then there's responsible people that should be there also to.
Yeah.
That's
We'll get into the concessions here, but is everybody okay with the turf field use? I mean, that's the first part of the draft.
So, in regards to Mike's comment about a school district south of us not allowing other people to use the turf for the first couple of years, is that where the determination was made for outside local community, whatever you want to say, only to be able to use the turf field for games versus practice?
I don't think we had any discussion if Janine Gemmel wanted to come in and she's running, she's coaching a youth soccer club team that has 50% outside girls on the squad and 50% local community group. I don't think we had that discussion that we're going to annex you from using that facility. So I think once it meets that facility's use form and they have the proper, and then if it's out of hand, if there's only one local community girl on the team and there's 17 other ones, it's going to come to light, and then we tweak the policy for the following year. I mean, it's going to be a trial and error, I think, in the beginning.
Absolutely. I think the overall spirit is to have community members who are invested in the care and maintenance of the field to make sure it's not abused, and I think that's the guiding principle. Is that the very people invest in the field would be the ones.
We also, like you said, it takes time to do restoral on these fields, and we're just we're feeling our way through that and around that. Yes, our staff is trained to do that work and everything, but it's a work in progress, and we don't want to beat it up, prematurely age it.
It's a learning curve.
Yeah.
So then we got into the discussion with the concession stand. As Tom had mentioned, there was some guidelines that we have to follow with the use of the concession stand. If an organization is going to utilize the concession stand and they do not have an Ulster County Department of Health permit, we are going to charge them for our food service worker to be present.
Who's trained?
Well, all
to manage
our
our
food service workers,
I just have a quick question. Under item D, it says the Highland Central School District Food Service Department shall operate the concession stand from 4:15 to 6:15 on weeknights while the school district's sports schedule is in effect. Is that every night they anticipate?
For say the spring season, you have track, you have lacrosse, and you have softball and baseball.
Something going
if those organizations or those groups are participating that evening in a sporting event, then we will have the concession stand open. Correct,
in a
Frank? I think
contest,
Peter,
right? In a
that's what we had
game,
talked
not
about.
just practice.
Through our food service department.
Yep.
Not practices, games.
Okay.
So there is a possibility that
I
track,
just read
football,
that as
baseball
every
could be
night
playing
of
at
the
one
week.
time.
It's
Frank, you have
every
something?
weeknight. It's gonna be open from 4:15 to 6:15.
They're gonna wanna come here.
Just to give you an idea, like this spring, okay? There's 18 lacrosse games scheduled on the field, and there are 6 flag football games scheduled on the field. What we're trying to do from 3 to 6:30 Monday through Friday, we're going to be practicing on the turf field Monday through Friday, maybe even some Saturday practices. That's just the school. We doubled up a couple games, and what I'm hoping is that we do have the concession stand open, for those 18 games and the 6 flag football games, during that time. And then we consistently be open, and then people will know it's there. And then obviously when we get to the fall, that's a different scenario. Also, with practice, this year, we're in a good position for those 3 teams to practice because track is not using the field or the track. The next year, that's something we'll have to figure out. But for this year, from 3 to 6:30 Monday through Friday, they're going to be practicing on that field.
So that was the discussion we had with the concession stand. And we did mention that there's a possibility that it can be open. I mean, this draft, it's all up to us to make, any tweaks to it, and then we could finalize it because it's right around the corner. So I'm hoping to finalize this by March 18th meeting. So any of the youth groups or want to apply for use of the facility
they start hearing
this
back.
spring and summer. So
Is this the first reading tonight?
this is, I would consider this the first
Okay.
reading of this draft.
I would
Correct.
too. I
Yep.
just want to make
Yep.
sure we were on the same
The
page.
draft is not much
For
different.
the
than current
concession
policy.
stand, the district is allowed to bring in profit on that?
What?
Just curious. I know it wouldn't be huge, but we are able to do that,
Yes,
right?
because they're under the food service.
Okay,
guidelines.
just want to make sure.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And so the
And
concession,
hopefully the profit would be paying for the food service worker to be working,
At a minimum.
because otherwise
Yeah.
it's gonna take a hit on the budget.
Mhm.
so the concession stand would be available if the French Club wanted to do a fundraiser for something. They would be able to put in to run the concession stand to have a fundraiser.
For athletic events?
Yeah, if they wanted to run because I know this has come up in the past at other sporting events where PTA, a specific sport team, a booster club. Again, it could be an organization, the band. Anyone wants to raise money
I think that was part of
towards
our
something.
discussion. Maybe we're hoping that would happen, and then, but you still have to have a food service
No,
worker.
I understand that you would. So
That
obviously,
organization is going to have to pay for that food service.
I definitely think that's exactly what should happen. That's I'm just having that conversation.
think the
It should come
difficult-
out, and then whatever's left over is a fundraiser for that organization.
I think the difficult part is we don't know how much this is going to make in revenue. So if we're telling the French club that they're gonna run it and they have to pay for the food service worker, they may not make enough money to pay the food service worker. So the district is taking some liability there. So that's why I think at first the conversation was that right now, to start out, it was just gonna be run by the district to get some sort of idea of how much it's actually going to be used. If they weren't selling anything that was hot foods, it was prepackaged, you don't need a health certificate for that. You don't need a food service worker there for that. Once you have hot food, you need the health department's certification
So you're
on it.
allowed to use the facility just as a storefront, even if you brought in your own packaged chips and stuff? Would that be allowed?
Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest with you, the concession stand itself in that building is small.
Yeah.
You're better off utilizing the pavilion with a couple card tables set up
Gotcha.
and you're protected from the elements.
Maybe that's an option. We'll take a look.
But along those lines, we will know the salary range of the food service worker and if, given the time parameters and the salary requirements, that could be communicated to any, if there was a school club or something wanted to utilize it. That would be the overhead that they would be.
Yeah, they know.
Yeah,
They
would know
get
ahead
to
of
know what the targets are, sure.
But we're also trying to get away from the potential liability of somebody setting up 10 crock pots with cords and.
Well, that's why you have to have supervision for those.
But again, you need
things.
responsible supervision. We don't want to have that liability minimized. Right
That was
there.
even events held in the school cafeteria were under the supervision of the cafeteria, right?
Supposed to be.
Yeah.
We're finding out that's not always have been the case.
I don't want to hear that.
Neither do I, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah, our rules that we're establishing for the concession stand and any distribution of packaged foods, which we don't need the food service worker, any unpackaged foods, there has to be a food service worker there, and the charge has to be associated with the organization that's.
Or your own health department certificate.
Or your own health department certificate. I think some of the concerns, and I've heard this from the past with some groups utilizing some of the town fields, that they are abusing some of their policies with alcohol, especially with football games, thinking, you're going to a professional or college football game where you can tailgate. So that stuff is not allowed. And believe me, it's got to be known to these organizations. I think that's going to be part of the letter that's going to go out to them to tell them that we are allowing use of the field, but there are these requirements.
Yeah,
and they're not going to be able to hide from it, because if you ask Mr. Miller, he's going to tell you how many cameras we have on all our facilities. So you're not going to hide from opening up the back of your hatchback and passing out, Coors Light, because it will be picked up on those cameras. I think it has to be, and this is my take, it has to be emphasized in that letter that you lose your privilege to utilizing that facility right then and there.
Maybe put a fine on there too.
Well,
I think the organization, the leader of that organization is going to get that letter from the school district stating all those things. This is the policy. And be aware that it is being monitored. We stress it with our own students and staff, no smoking, no alcohol, no this, no that. And we're going to allow community members to come in and do that? No.
Can I ask a clarifying question about the food? So I understand if you're making food, but say the food is pre-made from
Like
an
catered
outside.
from an
Yeah.
vendor.
Does
Yeah,
that?
it's being
Do you
sold.
still are you still required to have a?
Like pizza?
Yeah, like pizza.
Pizza needs a food service worker.
It would have to be made in a facility that's been approved by.
And
the
that's
New York State
part
Board.
of our policy, our insurance policy, New York State
Ulster
Department
County
of.
Department of Health.
Yeah.
Is that only if we're selling it as opposed to just bringing in pizza for the team to eat?
Yeah, you're selling it.
If you're selling it.
Okay.
You're selling,
Just
yeah,
for
yeah.
selling purposes.
No, because
So
the
yes,
Board of Health
somebody
must
ordered
be able to
20 pizzas
inspect.
and handed them out. Maybe it might in some other way.
Got it.
If you have a kitchen that's Board of Health approved and they've inspected it, then you could actually prepare food in your kitchen and then bring it. But that's the parameter.
It's we're gonna have to be patient with one another. It's not gonna be perfect, but I think I appreciate the effort to learn the facility, to keep it intact before you promise everybody that they have access to it. I think that's just smart. Because it puts everybody who works here at a disadvantage or is going to be responsible for that. And we want this to be a positive thing, both internally and externally. And it's going to be it's a patient road. This is just
absolutely.
one step
I mean,
in many conversations.
Yeah,
You end up with a Q&A, by the way, that helps guide this. So like all these questions do help, because you're going to end up with a question and answer that helps the person who goes there to try to figure out if using the facility is right for them and going through the process is right for them. It will guide them, and that develops over time.
I have a
Going to go
I
ahead.
just have just a few little minor comments since this is a first read. I know on page 1 we talk about that on Saturdays and Sundays for outside community groups. It's reserved for competition games only. So I would just like to see some language that doesn't roadblock these outside groups, because maybe you do have a local Girl Scout troop who wants to do something that isn't a competitive game, if you will. So the definitive language there is a little concerning. I'm looking for language on use in the summer. I did find content here that there has to be staff available, which I don't know what their schedules are like in the summer, so I don't know what use over the summer is when school isn't in session. One of the other thoughts we have to be clear on is we keep talking about we're not going to rent and lease this, and I get that. But I, from what I understand, it sounds like there might be usage fees. So if we're clear on there's usage fees because we're hiring someone in food services, that's different from signing a contract and accepting money to use the field, thus giving that party like, this is mine, I paid for it. So I want to be clear on that language.
Although a schedule of fees will be developed, because
Well, we already
non-
have it
in
through
a
our
contingency year,
Yeah.
you charge for everything.
Yeah,
Well, that's what the current.
So they still do
Charge for
demand
the
eventually.
lights.
I know.
We
And I
have
think we
our-
have to be
our-
clear on what we define as a community group. To Janine's point, are we going to ask for metrics of how many people are Highland residents that are
Oh, yeah, you-
participating? Because I know I'm involved in activities where it's a Highland group, but we play games and have these mini, I'm gonna call them tournaments, it's not an accurate word, of surrounding groups, Kingston, Saugerties, Hyde Park. They're not Highland residents, these are all children that are feeders, and it's great PR for Highland and stuff. So I think we should be clear in our language on how we're either defining community or how we're policing
It's usually a percentage.
what
but
we
yeah.
do for the community. And then there's just a couple of little things like in section 5, oh, maybe it's not 5, it's the responsible, and it gives you the list of the things you can't have. I don't want you to limit yourself by saying no sports drinks. You have to offer electrolytes to athletes on the field. So you want
To
to,
divide that up, because that
okay,
part of that is what's not supposed to be on the field.
correct, but are
Okay,
you
I
saying
know
that
that.
if
I didn't
someone's
invent all
got
this, I
Gatorade
told-
for an athlete, they're going to get in trouble?
but not supposed to be on the turf field. That is a turf field rule.
So where are they supposed to, so if,
Off the field,
what's considered off the field, like
Anything that's
beyond
not
the
turf.
fence?
Track.
anything that's not turf.
Again, this is where I think we toe the line, because you
Yeah.
go to school districts, north, south, east, west. I can tell you they're drinking Gatorade on the turf fields.
Not supposed to be.
And then it says no vehicles.
But
Is that
Gene-
also the athletic
I-
trainers?
This is where we get into trouble, because we say
No,
no,
we have-
we say no. I want to get
This
this
is our
out.
facility, so if the majority of the, we can't think about the other districts, because
But-
they could do whatever they wanna do.
But
They can have alcohol on the field if they want.
I get that, and I'm not saying that that's appropriate. But what I'm saying is that we get ourselves in trouble in Highland because we say no, or we are stricter, and there are other school districts where they are doing things and they're allowing. I know for a fact that there was an outside organization who came here to use our facilities. We said no because they didn't have the insurance, and they went south of us and they were able to use that facility. So it makes us look bad to our community members when we're saying no, but other school districts are allowing them in. So is it an interpretation issue? Is it, I'm not asking
It's just a
anybody.
maturity issue.
I'm not
I think,
asking
and
anybody to stick their neck out
familiarity.
there. I agree. I want to protect our district. I want to protect our community. But I'm just saying it makes it really tough when other school districts are saying yes because we've already said no.
I
They have
prefaced
one
this
incident at that
conversation
school
with the
district and we're
insurance
sitting
requirements.
and looking at them and they're suffering. I mean, we have to protect ourselves. I
I'm
think
not
it's a
saying
balance.
not to
It's a
protect
balance.
ourselves, but
I think this is the
Would
that group
one
have the
second.
word
Hey,
Highland in
hey,
front of it.
Hey, is that a recommendation by the manufacturer?
The manufacturer, when they put the field in, they give you a sign that says most of the things that's on that list. We had a football game last year where the Gatorade was on the sidelines and the Gatorade was dumped on the turf at the end of the game. That causes all the stuff, the pellets and all that stuff in the sand that's underneath
That's right,
everything to
everything.
coagulate and stick together. That's why there's specific rules according to the maintenance and preservation of the field so that you can get longevity out of it.
Okay, that's, That's why we have it. But again, it makes it uncomfortable and it makes it sound like, why are we so strict?
Correct.
That's the reason.
Because it's your entry point. Every one of those former schools, when they
This is the next
entered and learned this
Right.
facility, were probably more strict than they are now. 10 years later, 20 years later,
Absolutely.
it's your entry point. It's
Some schools,
it's okay to be conservative at your entry point.
some schools don't get the longevity out of the field because of lack of maintenance and lack of control of what happens on the field.
I think, like Michael said, I mean, we gotta take baby
That's
steps
the
right now.
difference.
This
all too
is
familiar.
new to us, so let's take baby steps and see how the first year goes. And if there's no real issues, then maybe we can expand. But
It's about $2 million, that facility, I mean, there's a duty to protect it right to spec the first year or two. I understand the
I'm
pain
not
and
saying to
everybody
be
wants to.
careless. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, you know, I think we have to be open-minded that we push forward this project for the use of the community as well as the school district. And I just don't want us to lose sight in that. That's all.
The community will
I don't think this
appreciate
policy
the
loses sight of
protection
it.
of the
I really don't.
investment.
just real quick, Jen, we did competition games for Saturdays and Sundays
Okay.
from any of our groups. Competition games, so.
But will we run into trouble if requesting one of those days be a practice day? Like anytime there's hard and fast language like
We're
this, it
trying
sets
not
up
to-
like
that would be a
months
preface
worth of
that
roadblocks.
Somewhere along the line that we're not allowing practice on the turf field. We're allowing practice as much as you want on the other turf field.
Agreed, but every so often you need a day to be like, this is what it looks like with a lined field, and when you have hard and fast language, everyone just closes every door in your face. So I'm just trying to be proactive
So-
about that. I don't want to be abusive of the privilege.
This is the facilities use is the biggest enjoyment of my entire life, okay? And
That's why you want the-
we try to rationalize that with, and we've had a number of organizations that understand how it works and the cooperation factor that makes it work to go forward. So there's probably no time that, as heartless as I am, that there is no denial of everything, okay? So we work with groups, we have groups that have special requests, we have people that are bringing in, you know, they're playing 5 different teams from different areas on the same day. Highland Youth Football probably does some stuff like that, so that, you know, that's something that would be considered normal, okay? The fact of the matter is the maintenance-free field is not maintenance-free, and a lot of our goal is to be in a position to be able to maintain it. And the spring sports are the worst, and I'm not blaming any sports, but lacrosse is the hardest on the field, much harder than football is, and we have to do what we have to do to make sure that we preserve the grass as long as possible without it getting crushed or worn out, and keep the field going. You can mow a football field when it's got real grass on it in about an hour and 15 minutes. You cannot groom that field in an hour and 15 minutes. So there's going to be a lot of times after games where the field is going to be offline because it's being maintained. That's all I can say. But there's no deadline, whatever. To answer the question on what's local is the Highland Central School District. Okay. We haven't done it in years. We haven't counted kids to find out where they come from. All right. When I first came here, we did have situations where we had people coming in with one Highland resident and 20 kids from someplace else, okay? That has not, to my knowledge, happened too much recently, but that's the gist of it.
I think, Jen, the district realizes, and certainly I realize, youth sports, because I was involved in youth sports for a good number of years, and youth sports in Highland, and Janine and some of the other, Tom can attest to it. Most of the organizations, youth soccer, Pop Warner, Little League Baseball and softball, probably had 500, 600, 700 kids participating. That, in the recent years, has dwindled down to probably below 200. So to support those programs, they're bringing in some outsiders. Me personally, I don't have a problem with that. If it's a Highland Babe Ruth program and they have 75% Highland kids and they needed 25% more to fill rosters, and they want to participate on our practice field because they can't obviously play baseball on the turf field, I don't have a problem with that. So I think we as a group have realized that youth sports it was on a decline. Hopefully it's starting to rebuild. I think Kevin can attest to that too. But at one point in time, it was all Highland youth and a good number of participants. So anyway, moving on real quick. I think if you read the insurance requirements, and this is from our insurance carrier, Desmond.
Yes, it is.
All right, they spell it out pretty clear. All right, the minimum required insurance is $1 million and $2 million aggregate. I think most organizations should be able to carry that minimum. If they're requesting the umbrella for organized athletic leagues, athletic and recreational camps, carnivals, and fireworks displays, it spells out the additional insurance they need.
Has there been a change in this, or this is what it's been for the
This is
past?
the most recent one, I
This
believe.
is the most recent one.
Yeah. It's been somewhat of a change recently.
$1 million umbrella policy.
And what's the
isn't a lot.
change on this?
My wife and I used
'Cause
to
it's
carry
always been
one
$1 million
when we used to serve hot dogs for the football games because, you know, you're always liable. And this is going back 20 years ago, but we had on our homeowners insurance, we had $1 million umbrella for just such a thing. You know?
Yes,
Because if someone
riders.
accused us of something while we were serving. So it's
Frank,
not
I believe the
expensive.
town's $1 million, $2 million aggregate. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a common threshold.
So I have a question about the insurance. Is there like multiple insurance companies for the school districts in, let's say, Ulster, Orange County? Is there like one?
There's two major ones.
There's two major ones. So is there much difference in the insurance policies between those two major ones?
I doubt it.
You wouldn't
No,
unless you have them. We'd have to.
We have Nicer and there's Utica National. Yeah. I would think, Janine, if Desmond just reached out to Utica National, you're going to see similar.
I was just curious. Like again, you know, hearing comments that have come back about our insurance policies and being able to go to other districts. And I'm just curious if they're on a different insurance policy. Do they have the same insurance policy? And, you know, if they are on a different policy, is it that much different that allows them to have a little bit more free reign to
Mike, do you know
two
what
things,
Marvel
that's
uses, Nicer or Utica? Utica.
So we actually were looking at speaking with Marlboro, speaking to other school districts and asking what do they have. As I said before, you know, a third. Nicer seems to be the prevalent one, but Utica National was the second one. We were looking into having them just take a look at our policy for other reasons, not necessarily to change the policy, and just to get an idea of what we have. But that's a whole nother project, way past budget that I was trying to get past. But that's something you may or may not want us to look into. But you're still going to have these insurance requirements. To answer the question that was from before, yes, we've always had a commercial general liability of one per occurrence, 2 in the aggregate. That's always been there. That has not changed. That's been standard. It's the other items below that we've kind of added or increased over the year, this year or the past year, saying these are the requirements that we need, and that's what's causing an issue for most entities, regardless if they're Highland, regardless if they're community-based. These are the insurance requirements that we're asking for them to meet. They may not meet all of them, but they should be meeting the majority of them. And when they don't meet these requirements, regardless of what they are, that's where the issue comes into play. They will ask the district to kind of, what does the district want to do? The insurance company will say, it's up to you, Highland, to make the decision. They may not meet, for example, the participant 2 million products and completed operations. They may only have 1 million, and they'll say, what do you want to do? At that point, you've got an event that's occurring that doesn't meet our requirements. We're saying no. What do you want to do? And now we have to understand we're taking on the liability if something should occur.
For their event.
For their event. They've only got $1 million. If they should sue us for 2 million, they get $1 million from them, and then Highland pays the other $1 million. As compared to our insurance is saying, well, why don't they have 2 million? So if that's the occurrence, and they pay out 2 million, they pay out 2 million, and nothing happens to Highland.
And the last rider I heard for $1 million for a 4-hour event was something like $75 on one event.
So what have we added, you said, over recent years, the stuff under the umbrella access
We
insurance?
had actually just the commercial, the 1 million, 2 million occurrence, and then the participants and some other, the auto, the workers' comp, the umbrella excess, all those were kind of added. And so those have caused a huge issue for organizations to.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm not following you, and Jen just asked too. So on number 4, where it says minimum required insurance, the commercial general liability insurance, all of that has been what we've always had, and then we've recently, again, loose terms.
Not waived,
Not
the
waived.
insurance company, not waived.
Oh, well, then that's so then the insurance policy has changed, because I feel like that was not necessarily clear, is that the insurance policy, so the insurance policy has changed to add in the workman's comp and all those other umbrella excess insurance aspects.
School insurance policies in the last 4 or 5 years have changed tremendously. We do school construction work, and what they put us up against for policies is unbelievable, and it's also passed down to, you're looking at $5, $6, $10 million umbrellas. That changed just recently, but it didn't change from the individual district, it changed from the insurance company.
Our policy didn't change, the insurance's
Requirements. So that's, I think, those are important, I think, pieces of information when we're communicating. Those are the points that I think need to be made in that manner, so that all understand. But I am going to go back to this. So, Desmond, what I'm hearing is that this sounds like that, yes, I understand that this isn't the only player out there, right? There's 2 different players out there, maybe a third. But at the end of the day, it is up to the school to make an adjustment, to take on that liability if someone, because that would explain, right, if there's probably not much difference between our school district and another school district, whether they have the same insurance or they have the other one, that other school district potentially is making a liability call.
Right.
Okay.
Because they have the same guidelines.
Just like letting Gatorade on the field.
That's correct.
The same thing.
Again, these are important points to make when people are trying to understand why something has changed from 2 years ago I was allowed to do this and now I'm not, and I just went down the street south of us and they said, sure, no problem. I think these are just important points.
But we're still vulnerable for any issue of negligence or property negligence. So even if somebody comes in carrying their own insurance, if there's something on our facilities that we haven't maintained, that leaves us vulnerable.
I get all. There's lots of gray. I get all of that.
Their insurance becomes primary, and if there's an award beyond that, then our insurance is affected. AKA, we want to be insulated. Right?
We have student groups that lose the ability to go on certain events, like at the end of the year, like the cruise on the Hudson, because our insurance company has set a standard that group can't meet. No, you got to have a $2 million.
The cruise line won't meet. It's not that they can't meet; they refuse to.
Or
meet.
they won't go there.
Correct.
So, and sometimes they can't. A group might not be able to do that.
World of insurance lately. I mean,
Yeah, global events, especially environmental events, have really tilted the tables for insurance companies. They're dropping a lot of individuals. They're changing they're basically been losing money, so they're trying to recalibrate. So
I get how insurance. I'm not. This is my point. Is just saying again. Outside community members who've been able to use our facilities and do things here are not getting that same answer back, and they're going to other school districts where they are able to do those things. And I just wanted clarity.
I think we have to get away from other school districts.
I understand that, but
you're prefacing every other school district when in your travel. I've done the same thing. I say the same thing, but we're serving our school district.
I understand that, but when you have community members who are trying to understand why they can't bring their group of Highland School District students to do something, and they want to know what's going on, and they have to go somewhere. That's what we need to be able to explain and to communicate why something has changed and why they were maybe able to do it in the past and they can't do it now. That's all I'm saying.
But with all due respect, we do communicate that to the vendors calling. They're saying, well, I used to do this before. I've got a lot of phone calls before you got here. I'm like, okay, I get that. So you used to do this before. Why can't I do this? Well, the rules have changed, and these are the rules. And then we get past that and we say, well, do you meet this criteria? Do you meet all of these items? And most of them come back, yes. Ones that don't come back with meeting the criteria, we have to now make this saying, well, could you give me a break? Could you, I need 2 million, I only have 1 million, it will cost me more to go get more insurance. Could you give me a break? Could you help me get through this? This is what happens. And then the district is now once again picking up that liability. The insurance company, NYSER, is going to do what they do to protect the district, and that's all they're trying to do. It then falls back on the district. What is the level of liability that we're willing to take, because other school districts may be letting it go or let it go in the past, and that's what we're up against. So now you have an organization that will come into this area and say, well, I'm not going to go to Highland, I'm going to go to Kingston because they're going to let me do it. And so that's that image we get of what, well, Highland will say no. But it's all about the insurance requirements. I just want to make sure I'm driving that home. These requirements, if they meet them, that's where we say you can have the facility. But if you don't meet them, that's where we're saying no, and it becomes a question.
So for the purposes of my own education and understanding some of the language here and my experience with a few of the roadblocks is the language in here talks about two things, like workers' compensation or things that they refer to employees. And all of the organizations I work with are 100% volunteer. Does that count as an employee when having to get all these additional riders? Like, we're trying to understand and interpret some of the semantics here, so you can help me with that one.
And one of the workers' comp disability that insurance that NYSER wants or New York State wants is a form that you can fill out online for free. We're actually just asking basically for information.
Okay.
And so that's free. And we've had situations where we've told individuals or entities, fill this out. Here's the website. It's free. Just go ahead and do that. But you have also other things like, auto liability. Maybe they, driving their own car, or maybe they're not. They have a bus. But then you have the umbrella excess, which is kind of the big area, if you want to look at something, where we have different type of occurrences occurring. So you can have an organization that's an athletic league and recreational camps. They start to fall into these categories, and that becomes where the excess that's a higher excess value that they can't meet. So, somebody could say, oh, I'm just general use is $1 million. And we say, no, you're really an athletic league, you need to be 3 million. And suddenly they're saying, well, wait a minute, it's 3. I can't meet that $3 million mark. And NYSER says, well, you're considered to be a camp or an athletic league. You should have $3 million insurance. If you don't, it's on the district. That's where you're having a good portion of your difficulty.
And from a district standpoint, we're trying to protect our liability, our assets. It's just like your own personal. You get homeowners insurance. You have they're going to base it on the value of your home, but then you have the opportunity to increase your liability. You might have a lot of money, a lot of jewelry, a lot of this, that if you don't meet with, they can come after that and take your worth if you're not insured properly. Same with your car. You could have $1.1 million. They recommend $300,000 for the liability on it to protect yourself. Otherwise, you can be liable. God forbid you get in a serious accident, they're going to come after whatever you got plus more. I think that's where, and I can't fault Desmond for that. He's protecting the district. But if we want, Janine, as a board, you're going to refer to the district down the road.
I think everybody thinks that I'm trying to be careless with our new facility or what we have. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to understand so that when people in the community come to me and be like, hey, can you help me with this? I can try and be able to help them more to understand the situation. I am not trying to be careless. I am not trying to be reckless. I'm not asking for anybody on this board to stick their neck out in terms of, that's not what I'm just asking for clarity so that when community members come to me or come to anyone in our community to ask about these things, that we have the appropriate information to share with them. That's all.
I understand that, and I compliment you for that. I think, and the thing that I would like to know is if a local youth sport organization is applying and they say, and Desmond says, no, NYSER says you got to meet the 3 million. I'd like to know what that 3 million looks like.
Yeah.
If it's another $150 and you got 200 participants, what is that?
Yeah,
you raised the participation fee 75 cents.
Yeah.
That's the big issue. What is the cost of that 3 million? Is it Is it $1,000 and you got 200 participants? What is that?
But to
It's
flip it-
$5 more.
But
each
there's another side to
participant.
that. You may have a smaller organization that will be doing the same thing and cannot. It will
Right.
cut into their dollars. So, you know, you've got big organization that could do it, and that's like $175 or $250. Well, this small organization that's kind of in that same bucket, that $250 is going to cut into their profit and maybe too much for them to eat.
And we
now you've got
probably
this
have some
dichotomy.
They're gonna have
school
to look at
organizations
other-
that fall into
Right. And now what do you make the decision on? You've said no to both, but you really want to make sure that, you know, the individuals have the space.
All right. I have to repeat everything tonight. So this is our first reading, if you want to take it as our first reading. Let's try to, you know, brainstorm this thing, digest it, and we'll come back on March 18th and hopefully approve a youth facility, near the youth facility of our turf field.
And the insurance issues, and it's not an issue of favoritism or anything, but do we have people perhaps in the Rotary that we could guide individuals towards that might be able to, to local businesses that might be able to help them
To help sponsor and
sponsor, or even, not even sponsor, but even, I believe there are community members who have insurance agencies or run insurance agencies, and if they're familiar with this, they might be able to guide those members of those community members on what they need to do, what it would cost them and how to.
We usually don't get into referring
I'm
people
saying-
to businesses, so
I'm
we
not
just
saying
ask
a
them to do a
specific business,
Google
I'm
search
saying
for
to help.
insurance.
Yeah, but
1252.
I am sure the same, Mike, but I'm saying this is not referring to a specific business, but saying they can help guide them
Be out of
towards
here
that.
by 9. Everybody wants to listen to the president.
I do, yeah.
I do see what you're saying. However, I do think that if we were to guide them to, let's say, Steve Laubach over someone else, we could get nailed that we are favorite giving him business and not someone else.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying perhaps if the Rotary is aware of the requirements and we just say.
Rotary is
perhaps-
one of them that was needing to meet the insurance. And
Oh, was that the? Well, there's the irony, okay.
not the Rotary, but someone from Rotary. So
just as a point, okay, the biggest problem is that everybody called up their insurance company on Tuesday and said, I need a COI, and they got it on Wednesday, they brought it in, and they were here on Thursday, okay? Doesn't work like that today, okay? Between the business office and operations and maintenance, the amount of time that we've tried to get people to understand that this doesn't happen quickly because it's got to be approved. And number two, that when we give you the information, and the information that the business office has that's on the website is complete, totally. And we tell people, don't try to do this on your own. Give it to your agent and have your agent walk through it. And as a final part of that, we give that agent the ability to talk to our insurance company to iron it out.
So you're already assisting.
But it's not something that takes a day.
No, I know, yeah.
Okay?
and to his
That's part of the
point, a
problem.
lot of times we're getting it on a Wednesday for something that's happening on a Saturday.
Particular riders can occur.
That's-
If you already have a COI to a degree and you need to make a modification, that can happen in
A
a day.
COI that we grew up with is not anything
No,
close to what you need today.
But if I need, like, say they're missing the parameters like Desmond was saying, if you have $1 million and you have to bump it to $2 million, that can happen in a day. You can call your insurance carrier and they can make that.
Correct.
Yeah.
But they're not good, but what I think Mr. Miller is saying is it takes longer through an approval process today as it did
Even if you
before.
have-
Even if
well,
you're
you have
able
to
to get it in a
process
day,
it, you
there
gotta
still is
look
a
at it.
process that takes
Right.
longer.
People have to be available to make that decision and
But
look at
that
it
whole
properly.
process is identified in our current policy that's been in effect for the last, I don't know how many years.
I'm
It gives you
so
deadlines
forward
for,
to reading it again
deadlines for each,
at the next
Do we
meeting.
say like no request within an X period of time will be
no,
considered?
read page 2, item 4.
I see that, but it just says when deadline. So that's it. So if I want,
For September through November. So if you know you're gonna use a facility between those months, put in the request.
so if I wanted to do something for spring between March and June, I'm done February 1st.
You should put it in last year.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, you're done.
Okay. That's all I want to know. I just want to know. I wanted to
So
be
that's
very.
the current policy. We haven't changed that. Our policy committee reviewed that.
Here's the buck, take it, Mike.
Old business. review of Board of Admissions statement. We took up a lot of time today, and I know
I have some comments on that. Do you want me to share?
we don't, on the
Yeah, I sent this.
mission statement. I know you sent it out.
Okay.
And Jen did also.
No, not tonight. I sent this a while ago.
To me?
No, I think I don't know if you were on it. I sent it to every. I thought I sent it all.
Is
A
it
while ago. So did
But
Jen.
it was
Through
well. Jen
email?
sent stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
No, it wasn't.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
We
Joel,
first
you didn't
started.
get it.
I didn't.
Are you ready to, you want to discuss some of it
No,
this
I
evening?
didn't. We don't have to. I was just thought because I talked so much, everybody's still on.
Like a Sadie's mail, that's it.
All right, we'll bring that up at the next meeting. BOCES board seat vacancies, I believe
Yeah,
there's
that's only if you have.
2
any
at large,
nominations.
which we can nominate, but our district is not open for nominations. I think it's New Paltz and 2 at large.
So it's only if you wanna nominate, if
If you
not,
want
you
to
just,
nominate for the at large
We don't
seat.
have to participate.
we don't have to
Right now,
participate.
Sue Gilmore represents us
Right.
directly to our district, but we can nominate for an at-large position. I think there's 2 available right now at
Yes.
We
large.
could,
Yeah.
so Highland could take one or both of the
Or both, we
at-large
could have 3
seats.
members serve on the board, 3 Highland members.
Anybody interested in that?
Any community member?
They all put their heads down.
Yeah, I see. I noticed
I was
that.
looking at Kevin, he's not doing much.
Kind of look at their shoes at once, it seems. All right, fair enough, thank you.
All right,
I don't
Um,
live in the district.
How about another district?
bus proposition, we already discussed that.
Good.
But don't, right?
Miscellaneous, Ulster County School Board Association meeting, March 13th, that's next week. You're going, please respond to
Yeah, if you
Lisa
plan to.
by,
That's the meeting that
Thursday.
the state education department officials will be at Ulster BOCES for any UXPA member. Any of you that want to go that evening. Unfortunately, I cannot make this meeting this time.
all right, anything for the good and welfare of the district? Just next month, we're gonna have the bus proposition discussion, the final draft of our turf field use. And we're gonna start on our district goals and mission statement, and have that board goals and district goals. All right, open up the meeting to public comment for general items. Yes.
I just wanted to say good evening to the board members. Thank you guys for your patience tonight, and to Superintendent Freer, Assistant Superintendent Zimmer, Dr. Boyd, and Mr. Barnett.
Name, please.
My name is Laura Finch. I'm an HTA member, a Highland community member, and a parent of 2 students here at Highland Schools. And tonight I have my parent hat on. Each year at about this time, I come to speak to you to thank you for your continued support of the music programs and the faculty here at Highland Central Schools. It's at this time because over the past few months, I've had the opportunity to attend a few of the Ulster County Music Educator Association's All-County Festival, including the All-County Choral Clip Festival, the All-County Band Festival, and the All-County Jazz Festival, which was held here at Highland High Schools and chaired by our high school band director. At those festivals, the caliber of musicianship exhibited by the student performers was awe-inspiring. Standing ovations all around. As always, Highland was well represented and well prepared by our Highland staff. My own daughters count these experiences as highlights of their year for many reasons. The ability to perform with musicians from around the county, the experience of playing with a variety of conductors, and the opportunity to advance in their musical skills. So I wanted to share with you today not only why it's a wonderful opportunity to advance the reputation of our schools, but also why music education is important for our students. I have copies of these studies, but in 2020 there was a study published by the Journal of Research in Music Education which linked music achievement and reading and math achievement. It means that regardless of other factors, socioeconomic status, income, all the other intervening variables, there was a statistically significant evidence that participation in music programs contributed to success in reading and in math. And in 2023, a new study showed, a peer-reviewed study, linked musical preferences and the development of morals, which is interesting, and suggesting that students' preferences in music can predict values in loyalty, care, and fairness. So having the caliber of educators we have here at Highland lead our students in this area can help them develop a strong sense of morality. I can't think of a better goal for my daughters, even above academics. So the amazing musical faculty here at Highland, as onboarded to guide their moral compass, I just know that wonderful things will happen with them. As you can imagine, music education and festival participation increase the students' social skills. They can learn about different cultures, work in groups, and challenge one another within the musical program and festivals. When I asked my two daughters about the highlights of their weekends at these festivals, they reported not only their favorite songs to practice and play, but also the friendships and connections they made both with peers and with the adults that were supervising them. Music education has also provided my daughters with a much needed source of stress relief when facing pressure from academic expectations, sports team, peers, and technology. Through the music education program, they've learned how to handle life stressors in a healthy and constructive way. They've learned time management skills, perseverance, and the pride of hard work done well. Finally, according to Bankrate, music scholarship for higher education, music alone, are on average $6,041 for a single reward. So not only can music education help students get music-oriented scholarships, but they can also use their music skills as transcript boosters for other financial aid or scholarships. Students that are educated in music have a competitive edge versus other applicants who do not have this additional skill. Even if my daughters wish to pursue fields unrelated to music, and my husband and I disagree on whether or not that will happen, their participation in music in these festivals demonstrates social skills, creativity, problem solving, and determination to learn outside the classroom. My daughters are my everything, and I thank the board and our music faculty again for having them get this invaluable opportunity and for supporting music programming here at Highland. Go. Thank you.
You weren't even asking for anything. You were just, thank you.
No, just saying thank you.
We waited for the whole meeting for that too.
I can scan that, put it in the Friday update so everybody has a copy of it. Are they both the same thing?
One is the moral study and one is the achievement study.
Okay. So I can scan them and include them on Friday.
I first want to say thank you for being a caring parent and a caring community member. Your time here tonight means a lot to us.
Anyone else for public comment? Yes.
Hello, my name is Dana DeStacy. I'm the secondary ANL teacher. I'm the varsity cheer coach. I've been the varsity cheer coach for 9 years. I am also a 4-H leader in our local community. And I'm also a parent of 3 children within the school district. I also can answer some of the questions that were brought up about the insurance. As some of you may know or may not know, Highland Varsity Cheer for 7 years now has been putting on our annual cheer competition that brings in many people to our community. And it is ran for a huge fundraiser. So that is the main purpose that we do it, because unfortunately cheer is one of the most expensive sports out there. So I try to raise as much funds as we can so it does not deter kids from trying out and wanting to be a part of this community. With that, because we have so many funds that we do get from this very large event, we're also able to support other clubs within the school, scholarships for our students and things like that. So this event is very near and dear to me. I started it here at Highland and I'm very proud of it, and I want to see it continue to grow. This year we faced many obstacles, but thank goodness for Desmond and his his expertise and patience with me, and we worked together. The rider that Mr. Vakatsias, you had spoke about, I did purchase a one-day rider. I had to purchase it through me. I used my own personal social security number to purchase this rider, and it was roughly about $2,500 for the day.
But how many? That was a pretty big event. How many guests were there?
We sold 992 tickets.
Okay.
So
Big event, real big.
yes. So that was for the rider. We have a DJ, and we do have other outside vendors. You know, unfortunately this year we weren't able to have all of our outside vendors because of the insurance requirements. I kind of washed my hands with most of them, but our event, our competition, cheer, you can't have without music. We need music at the competition. So I sincerely needed a DJ, and went back and forth numerous times with my DJ. We reached out to him. We said, you have to go to your agent. Your agent has to talk to our agent. I personally reached out to our insurance company. You know, I did all the things that Desmond was expressing what to do and whatnot. But the insurance, the 1 million, the 2 million, that wasn't the problem. It was the automobile that is expected, even though he just has his own car that he brings his stuff in. That was the issue. The workers' comp for him being, he's an out-of-state person. He's based out of Pennsylvania, and he didn't feel comfortable doing New York State workers' comp, so there was an issue there. And then the umbrella. And the district was not willing to bend with the umbrella, which I understand. So, you know, to have this event occur and happen, we had to move forward, and I tried making ends meet, and I ended up paying an extra $600 for the DJ to be able to up his insurance so he could actually participate in our event, on top of the one-day rider that we spent on $2,500. So that there, you know, put us in the hole that much more for our event. And again, it's, you know, going back to that mission statement that Mr. Fair had stated earlier, that it's, you know, it's for our students. And I feel we're just taking away from our students when we have to pay out so much. So I get the insurance. I get why we want to protect our facilities, and I understand that wholeheartedly. I do. And like Mr. Miller said, this is not an overnight process. I am well versed in that. I understand that. This event specifically, I sat with Mr. Miller last year at the end of the school year, and I said, please show me how to do this. I want to get this booked and done and set up so we have no issues moving forward. But we need a more streamlined, I don't know the words to say that I had said to Desmond, and that a process. We need a more streamlined process to help us with making sure that we have those necessary requirements, or a vendor's list to choose from, or something. So moving forward, we can still have these wonderful events for our students.
Dana, you said a DJ is basically a requirement you need for cheer, obviously. Could a DJ donate their time? Do they require insurance coverage? I think that's something that should be looked at.
So if I may jump on the subject, and I want to say thank you, Dana. We have had numerous conversations back and forth, spent many a time in my office going over the issue that we had to do with cheer. There were multiple problems that occurred with this, and it started off with the vendors now having the proper insurance, and then it started to escalate even to more issues. One of the things that Dana talked about is the fact that she had to go out and get insurance because NYSHR had asked for that insurance. And that became an issue. And the next thing was the DJ, which, to my understanding, since I've never really participated in cheer, and my grandkids are now in cheer, I understood, okay, they need a DJ. And you had to go back and forth with having the DJ with his insurance and making sure he had workers' comp. As we said, the workers' comp is free and online, but you'll run into the issue where an individual may not want to do that, and now we ran into a problem. We did eventually work it out. We did eventually get to the point where the DJ was going to show up, but Cheer ended up paying a lot more for the event than they anticipated. This kind of circles back to Janine's kind of point where we're saying you have an organization that is large enough to support that charge, or an organization smaller, that it's going to hurt them in this right now. And so we have set up processes. We are setting up processes to make sure this runs smoother. One of the things that Mr. Miller did point out is that we do have the insurance companies talking rather than going through the chain of going through individuals, because that takes even longer. The two insurance agents will talk. It's easier to flush that out. That's number one. Number two, we've also set up the rules of what you need on the website, and we will speak, when we talk to individuals, we are very clear as to here's the information you need. You know, we're trying to get it down to, and I hate to say this, dumbing it down to the point where we're actually circling the levels on your COI of where you've got to put your numbers. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. So we're moving in that direction to change the processes. However, these issues occur. With Dana coming up, there's another event coming up that she's planning, and she called me and said, we're going to meet tomorrow. And I said, the first thing you need to do is put it on the schedule of what day you want, and we will work aggressively backwards to make sure you have the proper insurance and have your vendors have the insurance. If it's going to happen in May, if we start now, go into the whole insurance problem, it will be resolved. So we are working with those individuals, we're also looking at our insurance and determining what it covers and what it doesn't cover. And so those are the bigger issues that we're looking at to make sure that we have cheer, we have varsity letter, we have booster clubs, we have extra classroom clubs. How are they structured to ensure that they have proper insurance for their events that they're covering? And I'm sorry, just one last thing. The insurance company is definitely pointing out that there are, for example, extra classroom, there's a range of things where certain extra classroom clubs have more activity that are more prone to injury than others. So cheer, if I may, or wrestling, or the other clubs that have a little bit more physical activity have a bigger liability than the chess club and Model UN, but they're in the same category of extra classroom clubs. So we're looking into that.
Just to brainstorm a little bit, out of curiosity, Dana, is that particular DJ self-employed?
Yes.
It's basically not a business. I know for a fact in our business, workers' comp for self-employed is not required. And I don't see why NYSER would say he needs workers' comp, because it says if this came from NYSER, it says for organizations with employees.
Right.
So why would they require workers' comp from the individual that's self-employed?
And these are the issues that we ran into with this particular situation, where we said, well, why are you making this guideline? How is it applicable to this particular DJ and in this particular situation? So we did work through that. We did eventually resolve it. But yes, those are the issues that when we're speaking with NYSER and we get the complications, not just from Dana or any other organization that says, I don't meet this requirement, we're asking, why not? What is the issue here? Why do you need workers' comp? Or for a DJ or a person selling candy, do they really need a workers' comp? So we're challenging that and saying that shouldn't be a requirement from NYSER when we're actually asking them to approve the vendor to come in.
Not to open up a can of worms, just came to my mind. Through Section 9, are all the officiating, do they carry, the Section 9 officials carry the insurance requirements that NYSER is requesting?
I believe so. I mean, everything's through New York. Everything's through New York State and Section 9.
I'd like to research that, because I like to throw that back in the face of NYSER. Then they would require $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
Do we get a workers' comp certificate insurance from Section 9 for officiating?
Not get that.
So if one of our baseball players hits a line drive and hits the first base umpire square in the head, knocks him out, who's responsible for that?
Good question.
I'm curious, just for my own personal edification, why was the DJ not covered under your policy? I mean, if you personally used you created your own policy, and he's not dispensing anything, he was just functioning for your I'm surprised.
In the situation that occurred, if I may,
Yes, go
the
ahead.
situation was, they were hosting the event, he was a vendor coming in. He's the vendor under, any vendor coming into the district has to have the appropriate insurance. Even though we're hosting the event, those individuals are coming into the district, are not under the umbrella of the host, they're under their own umbrella. Because the host is the one sponsoring the event and they've got certain coverage, but you've also got individuals. For example, I'm not trying to say this is going to happen, the DJ or somebody else comes in and they hurt a student or they do something inappropriate, it's on that individual, not the host. And that's how you would start the liability in terms of if they sue, you go to that person, then the entity, and then us.
Yeah, I'm just surprised. Any other, I can understand a vendor of goods, and but in terms of a vendor of services under the employee, I'm just surprised the policy wouldn't cover that.
Yeah. It was a back and forth with NICE.
Yeah, I would think there'd be an argument that she could have made, but
we were arguing on a minute by minute basis.
It's hard to get community members involved in that back and forth, though. I mean, eventually a firm set of criteria will emerge.
And I think, to your point of a vendor list, I think as this goes on and as it evolves, we'll become more and more aware of, not that we'd be recommending vendors, but we'll have knowledge of vendors who meet the criterion.
Yeah, I mean, my DJ is our Section 9 DJ.
Right.
So he does our sections and he does all Section 9 competitions. So having a vendor's list to choose from if we can't use our section, like that would be helpful.
That's not recommended, but vendors, and I think unfortunately you're a trailblazer in this as we enter these new territories.
So we do have a vendor list for certain things, like we do have a vendor list, a preferred vendor list for buses to take our students. We've got a couple of vendor lists, so anybody who wants to transport students, they don't have to go through the whole process of getting insurance again. We've already had these 2 vendors, if not 3 vendors, vetted by NICER, so you can pick one of those 3.
So
and then it's like
that doesn't.
Not gonna add a DJ.
So we'll grow, we'll learn.
So the DJ at the prom falls under that same category? No, open a can of worms, but oh boy.
Go ahead. Why are you looking at me?
Because you're the superintendent.
Am I good to go here?
Go ahead.
So, like I said, I've been kicked twice and told I'm eating leftovers, so it's going to be quick. And I'm sure you're in the same boat.
What are you blaming on her for?
Because that's what she did.
She's here.
Because you can't.
Member of our town board. I
don't mess around. So, first thing I want to say on behalf of my family, I don't know if my father knows yet, but we're incredibly
I
honored.
believe he knows. The guy wouldn't have been able to announce it.
And I got a problem with him that he didn't. So, and I'm sure when he found out, he said there's plenty of other people that are more deserving of the award and so on and so forth. But we're
those calls were made by Carol Crimi-Veroli, is what I was told. So
I would love to be a fly on the wall of that. On a side note, second thing, Joel, we stand with your decision today. Myself, my wife, with your decision that you made, and any brunt that you take, we'll take with you. And we wish the girls tomorrow incredible luck as they go to beat Marlboro and move on in the section. They've worked hard and they're incredible role models. I haven't missed a home game, and I've taken my daughter and her friends every single one, and they've just been incredible role models. Now on to the conversation that you're having tonight. We're throwing out words like a conservative policy and restriction on the field use and such. This is a field use that we should want people to use, and instead of looking for ways to cover ourselves, we should be looking for ways that we get these people onto the fields, onto the premise. And we have to look as a group at what we want to invest our time and our money and our effort into, because it's not just sports and it's not just girls cheerleading. It's our clubs, our Model UN and our student councils and our science Olympiads that also want to use the facilities that are now running into roadblocks with insurance. For 10 years, ran the Boston trip at the middle school, where I took every single kid that wanted to go in the 8th grade. There is no possible way under this insurance that I would be able to take that trip, or I would be able to facilitate that trip. We joke that Highland Central School District doesn't look at water. I took the kids on a dinner cruise and on a duck tour. Not a chance would that have ever happened. So we have to look at what do we want to invest in for these kids? What are our goals? And what is the district willing to accept as a risk to give these kids the experiences that they need? On a side note from that, a lot of our boosters and our clubs, they don't have a budget. They get their budget a lot of times, like Dana, putting out $2,500 for insurance. You know, our booster club has donated $25,000 to the district. You just approved some of it tonight. They don't keep a dollar of it, and everything goes back to the students. We want them to use these facilities and keep giving that money to our students. So I know it's real nice to have a policy, an all-encompassing policy, because then you can stand behind your policy and say, this is what we're following. But we can't in this day and age. Each entity has to be looked at as an individual and what they're providing for the district and what they're providing for the students. And then decisions need to be made based on those particular entities. To deny a group that's given thousands of dollars access to the facilities would be counterproductive to what we're trying to do. And you made a comment earlier, we're building this sports program. We're working our tails off. Football, basketball, softball, baseball, lacrosse, soccer, all of these boosters and parents are coming together. Yes, we're following in the footsteps that you and people around you, Tom, as well, that did this for us as a generation. We're trying to take that over, but we keep running into these roadblocks. And I think the frustration is people want to use the facilities, people paid for the facilities, and they want to have the same support coming from the school district to use the facilities so we can continue building what we're working on as this project. And I promise that's all I have to say. We'll have grilled cheese tonight, right?
Anyone else? Just a quick comment regarding insurance, and my mind's always running. I'd ask Desmond, I know we do it in our business, and we do a lot of municipal work, and a lot of the owners, school districts, libraries, fire district, whatever, on our insurance policy, they request additional insured, which would be the architect, the engineer, blah, 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 blah. Does NYSER entertain us as putting on as an additional insured onto our policy all our in-house clubs? So what I'm asking for, if we do that, and let's say the additional premium is $500, and it covers all our inside clubs. I'm not talking about the outside organizations. I'm talking about the Highland Central School District clubs and any of their functions that they are covered. And we don't have to require from them additional insurance.
I'll answer that question by saying, yes, we have explored that, and we are talking to NYSER to see what they come back with in terms of information, dollars, or just in general. And we're going back and forth with NYSER to try to make sure that's clear. And that's, once again, why Dana and individuals are coming, because we really want to clarify that. We don't want to go another school year or go another day by saying, oh, this one does and this one does. NYSER has to kind of give us the clear answer. If you're on board, this is what it's going to cost us. And if it shouldn't cost us anything, then we'll take it from there. But we are in communication with them to get that done.
If there is a cost, I think that's a further discussion. As again, somebody who wears many hats and a member and a director on 2 of the booster clubs, it is possible that some of the booster clubs could help offset that for all the activities that would participate. Football has donated a lot of money, so football and soccer is up and coming. There are things, so that might be something to think about if there is a way to share that cost so that it does cover all of the school boosters and clubs and organizations. And I use the word booster, and I think with due respect, there's varsity letter, which is helping with the athletics. It's specifically for varsity letter. And then there's extra classroom, which are by themselves with their own tax ID, their own audit, part of what we have to sign off on every year end. When we say booster clubs, I know that there are booster clubs outside of pilot. The booster clubs we have have their own entity. They're not associated with us. So with the way I look at it, it's either you're a varsity letter, which seems to be the ones that are on our books, or the extra classroom. When we say booster clubs, I just want to make sure the terminology that we're using, because sometimes that gets a little bit muddled. The concept is the same. They're raising funds to help the students, but they're really, the ones we have on our books right now are really just varsity letter clubs, which then opens another Pandora's box. Why are they not included in our natural insurance that we have?
if you look at Tara's treasurer's report, she has a list of,
Yeah, so that's not.
and all the clubs
booster.
are on there, and
That's not the booster
Yeah,
club,
it's
right?
not the
Club on there,
booster
which I
clubs
don't know
that
if it still
donate money
exists.
back.
That's
to
not
the
the,
school.
exactly, those are outside the organization.
That
One other
support the varsity
quick
club.
question. I
That
think-
support the
They
football
support
club.
I think
the varsity
insurance
players,
is a
but-
big question tonight. Desmond, is there I'm not gonna say an agent, but is there a representative from NYSER that comes down and sits down with your staff to review our policies on an annual basis? I know you're new to it, but I would think that's something that should be done, because in our business, our insurance, and we pay a lot of insurance between workers' comp and liability, a lot of insurance, not as much as the district, but a lot. Our carrier or agent comes, representative comes every year and goes through our general liability policy and our work, and when our workers' comp is due, comes through and sits down and reviews all that on an annual basis.
That is coming up in about a month and a half.
They do come down.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're gonna come down, review, and then I hate to say the sales pitch and say, sign off on your new policy. And in that moment, we're saying, wait a minute, we need to review all of these things that we have here. This is what Highland needs.
Good.
And if it can't be done, as we said before, we're just kind of exploring Utica National as what can they do as an option, just to look.
Because looking at this, and if this came out of their book, I think they need to explain, workers' comp, it says in parentheses, for organizations with employees, right? So if a vendor doesn't have any employees, self-employed, by New York State regulations, they don't need workers' comp.
Right, and so.
No, I'm just, and then who falls under organized athletic league? What is an organized athletic league? Is it the Highland Youth Soccer? Is it the Highland Youth Football? Is it?
And they have their definitions as to what would put an entity into those categories, and we can get that from them. What would make cheer a club, not an athletic league, depending upon the type of events that they're putting on and what they're doing, kind of puts them in a certain category. You can have a soccer club that's teaching soccer, or is it just a soccer team that's just doing practice? They're two different things.
Out of curiosity, where was Dana's cheer classified under? The general youth or the organized athletic league?
I think they put it under, excuse me a moment, they moved it to organized athletic league.
Moved it from?
They were trying to move it from athletic recreational camps.
Really?
Yep.
They went from 5 million to 3 million. All right, I'm curious about Section 9 and their insurance policy for all their officials. And if we have that in-house, copy of the certificate of insurance. All right, any other public comment? Good. I don't mean that negative. Motion to adjourn. Motion by Tom, second by Jen. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No opposition? Good.